All right. I believe that we are live. Thank you for your patience. Right as we were about to go live, my computer decided to freeze up and I had to restart everything. But we're live now and we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite attempt to find Muhammad in the Bible. I'm of course referring to Song of Solomon 5:16, or Song of Songs if you prefer, where we are told that the name Muhammad, or perhaps Muhammadim, if that is the other Islamic prophet perhaps, is found in that passage. We're going to get into that in just a moment. I'm, of course, joined by Ask Truth. We did have some difficulty getting this one scheduled. We had some scheduling conflicts, and then when we had it scheduled earlier, my wife was sick. But we're back now, and we're happy to continue the series. So let me open us with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for the technology that allows us to connect with people from all around the world. We know that sometimes Muslims watch this stream, and we pray that any Muslim watching take the argument seriously, just like we're going to, and see if it actually holds up to scrutiny rather than just blindly repeat it. Likewise, for the Christians watching, we pray that the material is useful, that they are able to apply it in their discussion with Muslims. If Muhammad is indeed found in the Bible, then we would want to know about that. As a prophecy, found as a prophecy, we'd want to know about that. And if he's not found in the Bible, like the Quran claims, then Muslims should want to know about that, because it would invalidate the claim of the Quran and prove that it either doesn't come from an all-knowing God, or it comes from a God who purposely is deceiving them, one or the other. So we ask that you be with us today and you guide our discussion along those lines. I pray that whatever we say is true and useful is remembered, and whatever we say that is false or inaccurate is simply forgotten. We ask that you be with us today, that you guide our discussion and provide the sense of peace and comfort that only you can provide. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so I have a confession to make that usually we have an animated clip taken from Finding Nemo. I was not realizing that this was coming up on Wednesday, so I was focused on making my video that I'm doing about Andrew Tate, and I forgot to complete the video. However, we do have a video from Ask Truth, which is even better. Anything you want to say?
First and foremost, it is not for me. I found this video of a certain gentleman, and I'll allow him to introduce himself in the video. I've never met him before. He is rather handsome and articulate, but yeah, I just was searching around trying to figure out how to combat these Islamic claims saying that they found Muhammad in Song of Solomon 5:16. And I just so happened, Thaddeus, to fall upon this particular video, and I shared it with you. And I hopefully it is educational for all of us. But again, I don't know this person ever.
Noted. This is a completely different person. Definitely not you in this video.
No.
Okay. As far as the animated clip goes, I will still put that together, and I'll just release it separately. It was going to feature a new friend of our hero. Her name is Zakira. No resemblance to Zach or Nike or anything there. And she speaks Hebrew.
So, not whale, but Hebrew.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it goes something like, I speak Hebrew.
Thaddeus, we love you, man. Thank you. You always go all in for that.
We'll go ahead and watch this clip from an unknown person here.
Good evening. I am Sir Frankfurt Falafel, and I am here to share with you all a story inspired from Muslim apologists using the Bible to tell the story about their favorite prophet, Muhammad. This was written by me, Sir Frankfurt Falafel, and this is how the story goes. Muhammad was once a king of Israel's son. He 'twas also his silver and his gold and his women. The king of Samaria had vowed to take Muhammad away from Israel and possess him for himself. This troubled the king of Israel, but he agreed, seeing that Samaria had great strength and power. However, Yahweh sent a messenger to inform the king of Israel that this would not happen, when in fact, Yahweh said that Samaria would fall under the foot of Israel. So the king, following Yahweh's order, sent out his soldiers. They routed the Samaritans. Muhammad was saved as the possession of Israel. Hundreds of years later, after that, Muhammad was then identified as Solomon's sweet and lovely mouth. So sweet, so lovely, so Muhammad Deem. And then hundreds of years after that sweet, lovely mouth of Solomon, Muhammad, he again turns up in the Bible to be burned along with the holy temple of God. Muhammad was destroyed and turned into ruins. Muhammad was then stretched out, and his sanctuary was entered by the enemy against his will. The Lord was displeased with Muhammad and bent his bow like an enemy towards him. The Lord poured out his anger upon Muhammad and stretched out his right hand against him and slayed him as a foe. And finally, poor, sweet, lovely silver and gold, women, son of the king of Israel, Muhammad, he did meet a better end under the wrathful judgment of God. And that's, wait a minute, there's more to the story. Muhammad is alive once again, but lo, only to be slain once more under the wrath of Ezekiel, who did not mourn for him or her. Muhammad was slain twice, and reincarnated once again, only to be plundered and taken away and buried once more. Muhammad is almost born again, but lo, he 'twas slain in his mother's womb. And poor, sweet, lovely, silver and gold Muhammad 'twas never heard from again. Or was he? Marvel at the proclamation of Zakir, the 21st century Muslim scholar. He proclaimed that this Muhammad is his prophet from the 7th century, and that we can know about him because the Bible calls him by name. But twain to ponder, I must wonder, whatever happened to poor, sweet, lovely, silver and gold Muhammad? What happened to him in the 7th century? Well, as fate would have it, he 'twas poisoned by a Jewess and died a long painful and agonizing death. This was told, of course, to us by his child bride, Aisha, who said that Muhammad claimed that he felt as if his aorta was being severed. And then, shortly after, he died. The end. Thank you for sitting with me today. My name is Frankfurt, Sir Frankfurt Falafel. Enjoy your evenings.
All right. Very interesting material there, don't you think?
No, I thought it was, and I had a chance to message him, Sir Frankfurt Falafel, and try to understand what and why he was reading, saying that Muhammad was all of these different characters. I had no clue what he was talking about, and eventually he explained it to me, Thaddeus. I had never heard this before. Apparently, words have meaning, and especially in Semitic languages, there's root words and things like that. And so he was very inspired by Zakir Naik, from what I understood, and he was inspired to see, here is this character, Muhammadin, who has been prophesied in the Bible in the Song of Solomon 5:16. And so apparently he went on a search to figure out, what does this word mean? Is it used any other way, shape, or form throughout the Bible? And then he discovered that it was indeed used 12 times in the Bible, kind of throughout the scriptures. And I did take notes, and I'll get into them a little bit. And as it turns out, him being a super creative genius, author, writer, and narrator, he put together all of the different stories from throughout the Bible, all the different contexts, and wove them together masterfully, if I might add, that masterfully, so that we would understand more truly this character from Song of Solomon 5:16, whom Zakir Naik and Ahmed Deedat and a lot of other Muslim apologists proclaim is Muhammad, who is mentioned by name in the Torah and the Injil. What did you think? Did you learn anything, Thaddeus?
I
Would you
thought it
like
was
to add
very
anything to that,
interesting.
sir?
That the story of this
Mm-hmm.
character is found throughout the Bible. I was under the impression that he was only in Song of Solomon, but apparently that's not correct.
Yeah.
If we actually take the argument seriously and
Mhm.
we look at all of the Old Testament in a few other places as well. So we get a complete story, if you will, about this particular individual, which is prophesized apparently by the Old Testament prophets.
Mhm.
I think we'll get to
Yeah.
look a little bit, more at that as we go along here. Before we do that, super chat from our Kitsune, Halal of Thrones, comment on the video there.
Mm.
Snowflake says that was embarrassing. Well, that's not fair. I mean, come on. He was just taking the Muslim argument seriously, looking, and he's trying to be consistent. Well, let's give him some credit. He's trying to be consistent and not just use the passages that he wants to use, but use all of them.
Yeah. But to be fair, I mean, you guys can say anything you want about that guy. I don't, I did speak with him, I suppose, but I didn't know him before this. So you can say any mean thing about him. I don't really care. One thing you can't say about him is he's not super handsome. That's neither here nor there, though.
Indeed. And Marion said Muhammad dim, with emphasis on the dim, because of course Muhammad is quite dim. At least if we take the Islamic narrative seriously.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and we do, and we will, and we'll kind of jump into it, and we'll see what's really happening. All right. Any other ones, Thaddeus, before I
Well,
move?
Snowflake did disagree with you. He said he really isn't. I assume meaning handsome. Although I suppose he could be saying Muhammad's not dim, but I doubt that. So he's probably saying that you're not, or I'm sorry, that Mr. Falafel was not very handsome.
Okay. I mean, that doesn't hurt my feelings at all, because I don't know them. Anyhow, so I'll kind of jump into a little bit of the meat of it. Typically, at this point in time, I'm going to open up my PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to share with you a whole bunch of deep insights into this. That's not how this is going to go today. We're going to use the story from Sir Frankfurt Falafel. And I think, honestly, the story speaks for itself. It is completely absurd. It is strange, and it makes exactly zero sense whatsoever. But the Muslim apologists are going to go with that, right? So we're going to first back up, and we're going to review why it is that we are doing what we are doing. The first reason why we are doing what we're doing is because the Quran says explicitly in chapter 7, ayah 157, that we can read about this unlettered prophet, whom all the Muslims identify as being Muhammad. We can read about him, present tense, in the scriptures, written about in the scriptures, meaning there was a writing written that the Muslims at the time of Revelation, between 610 and 632 AD, would be able to go to. And they could challenge the Christians and the Jews and say, look, within your Torah and within your Injil, there is a man named Muhammad, described in great detail. Even the Tafsir Jalalain says by name specifically. Now, I believe that's the only Tafsir I'm aware of that says by name. But, Ahmed Deedat and Zakir Naik took that very seriously, and they did find him written by name in the Torah and the Injil. But we got to really think specifics here, and we covered this at the end of our last video. The Torah is a very specific thing. The Torah is the book, according to the Quran, according to Islamic sources, the book that was written by God's right hand and given to Moses. Okay, so the book, the Torah, right, is the book given to Moses, written by God's right hand. I like to ask some somewhat rhetorical questions, Thaddeus, and I like to make you feel awkward in answering rhetorical questions. Okay. The book that Allah gave to someone, what was that someone's name?
Well, I guess that might depend on which book.
The Torah. I'm sorry, the Torah that was given. Who was it given to? What was the
That would be
name of
Moses.
that prophet? Moses. Okay. Here in this disputed passage, we see in the book called the Song of Solomon. I'm not real bright. Thaddeus, help me, please. When Moses was handed the book of the law, which is what the Torah means, law, was it ever named? Was he ever named? Was anyone ever named Solomon during, was Moses, is Moses Solomon is my question.
No, I believe they're different figures.
You think they're different figures? Roughly, help me here. How many years are in between Solomon and Moses, approximately?
Going off the top of my head, I think it's like about 600 years or so.
Yeah, they say 500 to 700, so 600 is just about right. So there's a 600-year gap between the Torah, right, the law that was written and given to Moses, and this book called the Song of Solomon. So right away, we have a little bit of an issue. And the issue is pretty apparent. I walked through it slowly for you guys. The issue is really apparent. This is not the Torah. Are there any laws given for instruction, Thaddeus, in the Song of Solomon? Can you think of any, Israel, you must do X, Y, and Z? Are there any laws given in
No, definitely
the Song
not.
of Solomon? So it's not a single law given in the Song of Solomon. And yet, in Surah 7, Ayah 157, it says that you can find Muhammad written about in the scriptures that are with the Jews and the Christians, and it names them specifically in the verse, the Torah and the Injil, which is the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Song of Solomon the Torah?
No.
Interesting. We're going to jump to Sahih al-Bukhari, 6614. Thaddeus, I think you've got this queued up for me.
Yep, I sure do.
Just briefly, this is just proof, Islamically speaking, and it's kind of a funny story. We can do an aside here if we need to. But this is proof that the book, the Torah, the law, was given to Moses. So this is Sahih Bukhari 6614. The prophet said, Adam and Moses argued with each other. Moses said to Adam, "Oh, Adam, you are our father who disappointed us and turned us out of paradise." Then Adam said to him, "Oh, Moses, Allah favored you with his talk directly, and he wrote the Torah for you with his own hand." Okay, now this is an amazingly problematic verse for Muslims, but we're not going to dive into that part. I just want to focus on the, "Oh, Moses, Allah favored you with this talk to you directly, and he wrote the Torah for you with his own hand." So it's pretty simple. The Torah was written for Moses with his own hand. So this is where the burden of proof lies, not with us as Christians, not with the Jews. It lies exactly with the Muslims. So this is what they have to prove. They have to prove how Moses wrote the Song of Solomon, or for Isaiah for that matter. And it's a mystery so great, Thaddeus, that only Allah knows best. Allahu Alam, right? Although I don't have any faith in the Islamic Allah, but I do have a sneaking suspicion that the knowledge of Allah is somewhat limited by the knowledge of a man named Muhammad. And that's a little bit besides the point. So Muslims are not going to be able to coherently explain how the Song of Solomon is a book of law, since it contains no commandments, like we already talked about, Thaddeus, nor will they be able to explain how Moses time traveled and wrote the Song of Solomon, but they will at least attempt to describe the phrase "altogether lovely." So they believe that the Hebrew word "altogether lovely" is Muhammad's name in Hebrew. However, they will not address that the Hebrew word Akbar, as in Allahu Akbar, means mouse in Hebrew. And they won't address the glaring inconsistency of their application when it comes to holding same standards or being consistent whatsoever in any of their semantic arguments. So the phrase "altogether lovely" is pronounced Mahmadim. Okay, so if you don't mind, Thaddeus, going to Bible Hub, Song of Solomon, and the linear, chapter 5, verse 16. I had a feeling you had that pulled up. Go ahead for me, Thaddeus, and click on not the number above Mahamadim, but the actual, the actual Mahamadim, right? So if you can click on that for us and zoom in, it will show you how it's used in that particular phrase. It's used one time, and it means desirable or altogether lovely. Okay, going back into it, I do want to say this, Thaddeus. Does Mahamadim or Mahamadim, however you pronounce it, does that sound similar to Muhammad, do you think?
I mean, a little.
Right. It's close enough. It sounds like Muhammad, but just with like the im kind of behind it, but you kind of get that thing as well. So it's Mahamadim. So in the Hebraic and Arabic languages, they're similar because they're both Semitic languages, And one of the ways that they construct their words and put them into sentences is by using root words. And so in this case, the root word of Mahmadim is Mahmad. So if you go back one space for me, sir, and then click on the number above that, the 4,000, whatever it is. All right. So you can kind of scroll through, zoom in on that. So Mahmad, the Hebrew word, the root word of this is Mahmad, which means desire or desired or desirable thing. Mahmad occurs 12 times in the Old Testament. Guess how many times it occurs in the books attributed to Moses?
I'm going to guess 0.
You guessed correctly, sir. So in no way, shape, or form does the books attributed to Moses ever use this root word, let alone the Mahmadim selection here. Right? So it occurs 12 times. And we talked about how Sir Frankfurt Falafel was inspired by the Islamic argument, and he drew all of his book and his writing from using the root word Mahmad. It was indeed a challenging task, so I hear from Sir Frankfurt Falafel, because as we find out, Mahmad is never actually one thing. So as you can see on the top right part of your screen under where it says Englishman's Concordance, that is if you want to zoom in on that. So we'll go to 1 Kings. You don't need to click on it, but 1 Kings 20, verse 6. When you read this passage in context, what you see is that everything that the king of Israel owns or considers valuable, which is King Ahab at the time, that is Mahmad. That is the root word used, Mahmad. Whatever is desirable in your eyes, the king of Samaria promises to take away from him, to plunder from him. And at first, when you read the story from Mr. Frank Falafel, you realize that Yahweh actually turns the Sumerians away. However, that is what they were going after. And very specifically in this passage, it says exactly what is valuable, right? So the English word valuable is actually Mahmad. So what is specifically and explicitly laid out as valuable throughout this passage is silver, gold, wives, and children, right? And wives is plural, by the way. So quite literally, if we're going to be applying the same standards that Muslims use for Song of Solomon 5:16 and applying it throughout the rest of Scripture like we ought to, quite literally it means that Mahmad or Muhammad is silver. It quite literally means that Mahmad is gold. Mahmad is a plural wives, multiple wives. Apparently he has multiple personality disorder, which actually might be a prophecy. And Mahmad is also children, right? So Mahmad is not one thing. It's literally just describing something. It's just a word that means desirable or desirable thing. In the next occurrence, if you scroll down to 2 Chronicles 36:19, it refers to everything of value inside of Jerusalem. And what happened to all of those valuable things that were inside of Jerusalem, Thaddeus? Do you want to guess?
I think that they were plundered or destroyed, something like that.
They were plundered, destroyed, explicitly burned down, including the temple, which was considered Mahmad. Or Muhammad, I guess, if we're just going to insert his name, right? Because if it's a name, it's a name and it's a name, right? It doesn't matter any other constructs of it. It's a name. So the next occurrence of the passage is what we saw. So when you scroll down, you see 5:16, right? And so the context of this is the author, the one who is writing the Song of Solomon, which is attributed to Solomon. The explicit context of this is talking about Solomon's sweet and lovely mouth. So if Muslims want to describe Muhammad as Solomon's sweet and lovely mouth, I suppose they could do that. But when they do that, they're also going to have to describe him as a child, as wives, i.e. multiples, as silver, as gold. And they also have to accept that he was plundered, pillaged, and burned to the ground. Now, there are a whole bunch of other
Mm-hmm.
passages if you just want to scroll through those for us, Thaddeus. We got Isaiah 64:11, Lamentations 1:10, Lamentations 2:4, Ezekiel 24:16, 24:21, 24:25, Hosea 9:6, Hosea 9:16, and Joel 3:5. When you guys take your time to go through this, you can read about it. Go into your favorite Bible translation, read the context of the passage. This is where Frankfurt, at least I'm told, Frankfurt Falafel got his idea from to create the Muhammad story. So we read that Mahmud is burned. He is the burned down temple. He is also Jerusalem who has been violated. He is also the youth of Jerusalem who were killed. He is Ezekiel's wife who dies. He is the temple of security and pride that was destroyed. And he is also Israel's sons and daughters that were slaughtered.
Yeah, I'm
So
not seeing any problem. I mean,
I
this is
want,
all completely
yeah,
consistent with Islamic theology, right?
it is. And that's why I mean, not I, that's why Sir Frankfurt Falafel threw in the part at the very end. Right. So if all of these characters are the one character, Muhammad, first of all, there's a bunch of reincarnation that's happening throughout the Islamic ideas. And there's a lot of punishment going on and destruction going on to Muhammad. And then as fate would have it, Muhammad was actually destroyed by a Jewish woman who fed him poisoned lamb. Oddly enough, he took up her invite to come and have dinner with him after he and his soldiers quite literally slain her entire family and village. He decided that it was a good idea to go have dinner with this woman. And one of my favorite stories in history, this is like better than Looney Tunes. He sits down at the table. Okay. And remember, he's Allah's favorite prophet, Thaddeus. And he takes a bite of this leg of lamb, right? And then this is how much Allah loved him. And then Allah revealed to him that the leg of lamb was poisoned after he had already tasted it, right? And then he cries out to his poor child bride, Aisha, who was about 18 at the time. They'd been married I guess they had been married via consummation for 9 years. And he tells her that he feels as if his aorta is being severed. I know we're getting off on a tangent, but I'm almost done with the whole thing. So we're going to go
Okay.
on red herrings here, Thaddeus.
Mm-hmm.
Fun question for you. If Muhammad, let's just say, I know it's impossible, but if Muhammad were a false prophet, if he were to deliver false revelations, is there any indication in the Quran what would happen to him if he did, if he was just some guy
Yeah, well,
making up
the
revelations?
multiple gods, who is actually one God. I'm referring to the fact that he says we.
Mhm.
He says we would surely
Yeah.
seize you by the right hand and cut off your aorta if you were making up verses and putting them in our mouth.
Hmm. And then how did he die?
Well, according to his own words, he felt that his aorta was being cut.
But if he was a false prophet, what would happen to him?
He would have his aorta cut.
But he's a true prophet, right? Because hear me
Well,
out. Hear me out. How would he have known? Only a true prophet would know that if they were a false prophet, that they'd be proven as a true prophet if they died the way that they said they would die, if they were a false prophet. So that made him a true prophet.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
I mean that prophecy there, that was pretty good. Of course, we're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
believe that's Allah's word, so that would make Allah a true prophet, not Muhammad.
It would indeed. David Warren actually posted up here. So people have pointed out the word used for aorta in the Hadith is different than the one that means jugular, and the other one means aorta. I am not an Arabic expert. I've spoken to Arabic experts about this, and I've looked into it personally. And you can look into this as well. From my understanding, they both mean aorta, and I believe the Hadith one is even more specific about the aorta than even the Quran one is. But from my understanding, and Thaddeus, maybe you can add into this, or if we have any Islamic speakers, they could correct me or verify what I'm saying is true. They both mean aorta.
There's some. If you look at a classical dictionary of Arabic, or a dictionary of classical Arabic, I should say, they'll basically have the same definition for both words.
Okay.
There's some question as to whether one is more specific than the other, but it doesn't really solve the problem, right? I mean, if you use a synonym for that means the same thing, is that really different? I think that of the Muslim excuses they try to offer, I think that's the weakest one.
Yeah. So I don't know why my brain thinks like this, but like an example I could give you, like a modern day example, right, is like I can say like I got punched in my stomach, right? If I'm a false prophet, I'm going to get punched in my stomach. And then later I'm, running around and I get punched in my stomach, but I exclaim, "You hit me in the breadbasket." Is there really any difference between what I said, I'll get hit in the stomach versus I'm getting hit in the breadbasket? No, they're just different ways of saying the exact same thing.
Yeah. So since you brought up the subject and you went on this tangent, now you got to deal with the other Islamic excuses. I think probably the best excuse they offer, at least in principle, is that it's just a idiom, that it's just a way of saying you'll die. So how would you respond to that one?
I agree with you, actually. I think that is the best response to it. Again, not being an Arabic expert of what an idiom was back then, right? You're going to have to provide evidence that it was a common idiom, just to say, oh, that's just a way of saying that you're gonna die. He still died in the way that he said he was going to die. So if the all-knowing Allah wanted to make very clear what it was that he was going to do, he didn't do a very good job by using an idiom to say that, and it, as I'm just spitballing here, Thaddeus, upon Muhammad's death, I believe there are some of the biographies that say that his followers believed that he would resurrect. Is this true?
Yep, that's true.
Have you heard that before? Okay, so his followers believed that he was going to resurrect. Why? Why would they have come up with that idea? So let's say that verse was an idiom, saying, look, if he's a false prophet, he's going to die, right? That's how a modern Muslim would react to that. Say, oh, well, he's just going to die. So therefore he will never die, because he's never a false prophet. He's never delivered a false revelation, which is demonstrably false, which we covered in Deuteronomy 18:18 extensively. So he's never a false, he's never going to die. So that might have been why his followers were so convinced that he wasn't actually dead and that he was going to somehow resurrect. I don't think that's exactly the answer to the question, but I would say, look, if you're going to go with the idiom, it's got to be the idiom both ways, and he just can't die.
Yeah.
But he did die. So end of story. And maybe that's where you were going.
Well, no, I just asked the question because that's what Muslims bring up. You started off by saying they would have to prove that, and that's what I say to a Muslim when they tell me it was an idiom. And strangely, they've never provided any proof. I don't definitively know that it's not an idiom, but the fact that it's two different words kind of undermines the claim that it's an idiom, because idioms are a group of words that don't have a meaning equal to the literal combination of the words, which means that you don't have an idiom with two different words in it that mean the same thing. I mean, you still could. It just makes it just undermines it. So they really need to provide some evidence for that.
Yeah. That was one long red herring that I threw us into, and I apologize,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
fun
Well, we blame
information.
you.
Yeah, no, it's 100% my fault. So we'll try to pull it back in here, guys. So as the Muslim apologists say, right? Muhammad is mentioned by name. That means Mahmad is a name, right? And so all of the other stories that we just read about him, that also has to be him. As we've just read and as we've just heard, it is incoherent and nonsensical to hold that position on the account of how absurd that story actually was about Muhammad as being this character who's time traveling throughout, Israel and going into Arabia and dying all of these crazy tragic deaths and shape-shifting into silver and shape-shifting into gold and shape-shifting into a woman or a child, or even one of them, he was an unborn child who was killed as well. So it's just a level of inconsistency that Muslims really don't want to take, right? So if it is about if it is about Muhammad, that just means that he was destroyed over and over and over again throughout the centuries and millennia. And that at the end, he is not resurrected since the Jewish woman poisoned him to death. He is still dead since then and being tortured in the grave and under the feet of Jesus Christ, judged, burning in hell. That's my opinion and the opinion of a lot of others. However, and again, we've been as charitable as we possibly can be with Muslims on this. If we're being charitable, I would just give some advice to the Muslims. Muslims, right? Look, there are arguments that you can use, right? We've debunked Deuteronomy 18:18. We've debunked Deuteronomy 32. And this one is quite laughably debunkable within minutes about the sweet, lovely mouth of Solomon and his wild journey throughout history, and always being punished, by the way. So if I'm a Muslim apologist, I'm not going to use this argument. And in fact, it is so embarrassing to try to use this argument that I would go around campaigning against other Muslim apologists for ever using this. Because when you hear this, it makes you go, what are you talking about? And it makes you just want to turn away from Islam altogether because of the arguments being made by their apologists. So my sincere advice to Muslim apologists, don't use this one. Don't use Deuteronomy 32. It didn't work well for you unless you want to commit shirk. And don't use Deuteronomy 18:18 unless you're willing to agree that Moses would have stoned Muhammad to death for revealing false revelations and not having any prophecies come true. Otherwise, hold on to hope, even though there is no hope for you anymore, because as we established, the Torah is done. The Torah was done with Deuteronomy. Song of Solomon is not written by Moses, was not a book given to Moses. In fact, it says in its name that it's not Moses. It says Solomon. The next couple of Old Testament passages we're going to go to are going to be Isaiah. I don't know if we go to 23, 29, 42. Thaddeus, do you remember which all ones? Because you had one that you really wanted to go with, right?
Yeah, well, so there's three passages in Isaiah that they try to go to. They try to go to where it speaks of the unlettered prophet, supposedly, or it speaks of a figure who is told you can't read. So they say that's Muhammad. That one's not too popular, and if you read the passage, you'll quickly figure out why. Then there's a passage about. Well, in context, maybe I shouldn't give it away, but in context, it's about Yahweh condemning Arabia, but or a certain northern region of Arabia, near where Muhammad was. And they'll say that this is the conquest of, or it's the migration from Mecca to Medina. And so there's that one, which I think that one's 29, right?
I believe so, yeah, because I was thinking, but I remember 29, 42. What was the one you were talking about, the unlettered? Was that 23? 21?
It could be. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, and we'll get it all looked up. I have it all organized somewhere in my brain and on paper. But yeah, so we'll definitely get to that, and we're just going into it in terms of chronological order, at least chronological order in terms of how the Bible is written, right? So we're going from the first books of the Bible as you progress through to the
So
last books of
it
the Bible.
looks like 29 is
Hmm.
actually the unlettered prophets.
Oh,
That
that's it.
means
Okay.
it must, so then it's probably 23. That's
Yeah.
the passage about Arabia.
Yeah. And
So
that's
we
the
had it
one.
backwards, but
Yeah, so that's the one that oh, what was his name that was in the chat earlier that was saying that he was having a conversation with with a Muslim on Isaiah 29, and I asked him a question and I haven't read it. Anyway, I'll find it. I'll look back at this, buddy, and we'll be able to chat with you a little bit more about it. But anyhow, so we're just going through that. But again, like I said, as we pointed out, the Torah, which means the law, was written by, according to Muslims, a law and given to Moses, right? And again, unless we're willing to grant that Moses is some sort of time traveling shapeshifter, which we might have to do, because they also believe that Muhammad is a time traveling shapeshifter. So maybe they just believe in all of that stuff. Maybe that's part of their secret society stuff that none of us are ever gonna know about. But anyhow, that's where we're at with that. But there is hope in the New Testament, my friend. Really, there is hope in the New Testament. But for the Muslims, there's also hope in the New Testament for real. And then there's also hope in the New Testament in Matthew. I believe that one might be Matthew 23 and John chapters 14 through 16. And so we'll get to that. And then we're going to do the Muslims a favor, aren't we, Thaddeus? We're going with their arguments for where Muhammad is.
that's true.
But
That's
we
true.
are smarter than them because we believe the Bible, we study the Bible, we read the Bible consistently. We know where Muhammad is in our Bible, and
Yeah,
the game,
he may be in there after all.
he might be in there after all. And so we're going to do a real quick reveal, right, on
Hmm.
where we believe that he is as a little bit of a bonus video here, right? So just kind of wrapping up here, and then we'll just get into some free flow conversation stuff, right? So if Muslim apologists are going to be intellectually honest, like I said, just abandon this. Don't use this argument anymore. Protest against any other person for using the argument. End of story. Let's get to if you got any chat things you want to pull up here, Thaddeus.
Well, I don't
Otherwise,
have
I can do it.
anything
Yeah.
immediately from the chat, but I did have a couple things that I wanted to bring up while we're still on the
Yeah.
Song of Solomon 5 here.
Oh, yes, sir.
First of all, earlier I posed a question to you whether this was consistent with Islamic theology, and you kind of said yes, it is, because Muhammad was destroyed, and then we got on to that
Yeah.
aside. Um, and it actually does sound a bit like Muhammad, not in Song of Solomon, but if we take all these passages seriously,
Hmm.
uh, and we reword them slightly, since it's really just a noun that is a precious thing, and we just say we reword it, since we're now put a name in there, we rearrange it a little bit, which you can do in Hebrew.
Hmm.
And now, so we're saying that Muhammad is these things. So Muhammad brings destruction.
Mm.
Muhammad seeks after gold and other precious items.
Mm.
Uh, Now, we'll still have a big problem when we get to Ezekiel and it's describing Ezekiel's wife. I'm not sure what we can do to help out the Muslims there, but
Well, Muhammad did wear the garments of Aisha, right, to receive revelation.
could be, could be.
And I've not personally looked into this, but Rob Christian has done quite a few videos about some hadith about Muhammad perhaps being ridden um, bareback, so to speak,
Mm,
by some spirit creatures as well.
okay,
So there could be there could be some truth behind it, perhaps.
could be, could be. Then the other thing that I wanted to say is that they really should go to the singular passages. You know, you mentioned the eem, but you didn't really say why that was. So maybe
Mhm.
my question is to you, what does that eem mean in Hebrew, that little suffix?
It's a plural of attributes and multiple attributes.
So if you see this somewhere in the Bible, it doesn't identify a person or a people group or anything like that?
Um, it can identify. It's more of a title. Like Elohim. Is that where you're going with it, Thaddeus?
Oh, okay. So maybe I should have. So I had a Muslim come to my channel some
Okay.
time ago, and they were telling me that the "im" suffix was only used
Oh
for
yes.
people groups. So in, I believe it's Song of Solomon 1,
Hmm.
it's used of um, something which isn't actually referring to David, but he interpreted it as the people of David. So now here it isn't referring to Muhammad; it's referring to the people of Muhammad. That was his argument. So Song of Solomon 5 isn't about Muhammad; it's about the people of Muhammad, according to this fellow. Now I did ask him numerous times to provide any expert in Hebrew who agreed with this. I did warn him that the plural suffix occurs thousands of times in the Bible, and it
Hmm.
is, literally always just plural of something.
Right.
Um, but uh, how would you answer this fellow who thinks that this is referring to a people group? So it is the Mohammeds, is what he's saying basically. That it is the Mohammeds. He's not denying that it's singular. Unlike say Zakir Naik, who would say that
Okay.
it
So
is singular.
basically, I think I've just grasped what he was trying to say. So right. So basically, the Mohammeds are what kind of the more contemporary Christians to Muhammad's time, closer to his time. They called them Mohammedans, right? So we would call them Muslims today. So this is essentially he's saying is addressing Muslims. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yeah. So like they're the Mohammeds, but they're Muhammad's people. So that's what he's
Well,
saying. What this particular fellow, and to be clear, this is the only person I've ever heard that makes that
yeah,
argument. But still,
the more common one I hear is that it's like a plural of majesty, right? It's
yes.
to just indicate how fantastically wonderful and great this particular individual is. Um,
Yeah.
but
So we'll go ahead and tackle both of them then.
well,
I
let's
was going to do that one separately, but you can
yeah,
tackle
no,
both of
that's
them.
fine. If you want to pull up, um, if you want to hold on, let me close this out. Somehow. Sorry, I got a trackpad and it's being silly. I guess maybe don't get a Mac. Um, if you could pull up for me Song of Solomon. So were you saying that guy was going with chapter 1
Uh,
or
yeah. Well, I mean, he was saying that 5 was about Muhammad, but he was to enhance his argument. He was saying that in chapter 1, let me see if I can figure out
yeah,
what
if
word he
if
was
you could
referring
pull it
to.
up and I can pull it up too, but I figured it'd just be easier if we could just everybody could look at the same thing at once.
Yeah.
Um,
So well, let me go ahead and share first of all. Let me figure out what he was talking about. So there's no plural. Well, yeah, there is, but
so
that's definitely not what he's
better,
looking at. Yeah. Uh,
good ends in eam, right?
yeah.
Um, so he's saying that the eam is plural for Muslims, and then he switches it to saying that, well, chapter 5 then, for whatever reason, switches from it remains plural in the eam sense, but it switches from it was plural and meant the Muslims, and then in chapter 6 it means the Muslims, but in chapter 5, even though it doesn't change to singular, it still means, but it means Muhammad then.
No. He was saying that it's a prophecy about Muhammad only in the sense that about Muhammad's people. He never said that was specifically
Okay,
describing
yeah,
Muhammad, that it was
gotcha.
describing the Muslim people.
Right, so we're talking about vineyards. I'm seeing there on your screen. you know,
Yeah, there
so
was a vineyard
perhaps the
in
Muslims
there,
have
which
vineyards.
that wasn't it.
Um,
No,
oh, you sound like you're in the
whatever.
Matrix, buddy. Oh, there we go. Are you there still? Can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. For some reason,
I don't. All the screen went blank for
yeah.
a second, but
Can you repeat what you said there for me, please?
this particular Muslim said he was trying to claim a particular word meant David or
Oh,
Davids, I suppose. And because I'm pretty sure it was in Song of Solomon 1. But notice we're going past plural word after plural word
yeah. There's tons of them.
with the "im" suffix. Almost like it's just an ordinary thing, like an S in English.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't see any. I mean, there's literally just an I am
Yeah,
right there,
and
which
this is
is
my mistake.
if.
It or if I had thought of it ahead of time, I would have figured it out ahead of time. But unfortunately, I did not
Yeah, no worries.
think of. Anyway, maybe I'll
Okay. Oh dear. Well, looks like Mr. Thaddeus has dropped off, and I don't even know if we're live right now, but I'm going to pretend that we are. So I'm going to pull up my YouTube here real quick and take a look and see if we are still going live so I can filibuster in the meantime, and maybe we can get to some of the chats. Yes, I am. I can see myself. Beautiful. All right, so I'm going to take a look and we're going to engage with some of the stuff that you guys are saying as we wait for Thaddeus to jump back on. Again, maybe he does need to get a Mac. So Dissecting the Quran series DQS channel. I can't pull it up on the screen. But anyhow, he says that the im, brother, means respect. It is the plural of respect. It is the plural of majesty. This, like I said, is one of the more common objections that Muslims give to this. You know, the im is very specific. Elohim, Mahmadim. It is a name and not necessarily a title. Although, as we were going through it, like vineyards, the word for vineyards, as Thaddeus was scrolling through, also ended in an eam. I mean, so if you want to do a word study, like Thaddeus said, you're just going to figure out that that is ending in S, and that's all that there is to it. But if you guys are, I give a little plug to DQS channel, Dissecting the Quran series channel. He's got some good content going on out there. They are literally dissecting the Quran. So they're going through the Quran chapter by chapter, verse by verse, through the entire Quran. I believe they're about halfway there, living on a prayer. Bon Jovi, Haram music. But they're doing a fantastic job over there. So if you guys want to go over there, give them a like, a subscribe. Check out some of his videos, leave comments, all of that fun YouTube stuff. Please go ahead and do that. Marion Gran is saying that Molly, which is a fun name for Muhammad, was written by ordinary musically blokes. I'm not really sure what the music sign is. Not spirit creatures, right? So basically, she's saying that in that particular thing, it's not spirit creatures. It is it's actual people that Muhammad convinced his companion that they were actual spiritual people. Thaddeus, I can see you on my screen on YouTube, but I can't see you on my screen
Well,
here.
I think you should be able to hear me, right?
I do hear you now. Yes, sir. Now I see both of us.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, so from my end, we were both still connected, and then I went and looked at what was streaming, and only you were there, and I couldn't rejoin. I had to like refresh the browser.
Oh, did you? Yeah, it just like a couple of times you were like matrix sounding, and then the screen would flicker, and then you just were gone. And so I ad-libbed the best I could.
Well, I'll watch it back later and let you know how you did. But before I got disconnected, what I was saying, and maybe you already answered this, I don't know what you heard, but I was saying, do you know anywhere in the Hebrew Bible where the plural suffix is ever used for respect?
Well, the plural of respect, the plural of majesty, is not in use at all in any language, to my knowledge. I believe until the Byzantine Empire was in power. So we're talking 300, 400 AD. And then kind of the royal we, so to speak, started happening in Greek and Latin, I do believe. In nowhere, shape, or form, in no way at all is Hebrew the same thing as those languages, first of all, right? So just because it exists in one language doesn't automatically mean it exists in another language. And two, there is no evidence, to my knowledge, that that was ever a thing. So what this is called is ad hoc explanation, right? After the fact, you're just making up some excuse for something in the past using your present tense lens, right? So there you're taking something that we know now is a royal we, and you're going, oh, well, we're going to use this thing that didn't even exist at the time to interpret the scriptures. And that's just a really bad hermeneutic. You're shaking your head. I must agree with whatever you also know.
Yeah. I think everything you said was accurate. Now, technically, we'd be talking about two different things here. There's the royal we, and then there's this claim of plural of respect, which wouldn't be necessarily the same thing. However, neither one exists in Hebrew. So
Okay.
we can just throw that out. You're right. As far as we know, the first use of the royal we was not until many centuries after the Old Testament was written. But what people also fail to realize is that the royal we is plural because it's actually plural. It has nothing to do with respect. The king or queen speaks on behalf of the royal court. That's why it's plural. They're speaking for all of the court when that's the idea. That's why it's plural.
There you go, making sense again, Thaddeus.
But yeah, this idea that there's some sort of plural of respect, yeah, that's not a thing in Hebrew. No Hebrew scholar will say that. And they want to go to this particular, they want to go to this one for a couple of reasons. One, because they think it sounds all right, sounds kind of good.
Yeah.
And two, because of the suffix, it makes the sound more like an H. So then it kind of sounds like Mohammedim. So, to his credit, Zakir's not entirely wrong. He didn't just totally make that up.
Right.
But that's only in the Masoretic pronunciation, which came about in the Middle Ages. We don't really know for sure how it was pronounced in ancient times. So
yeah, I mean, so it's like a best guess pronunciation based on the earliest, because they would have like the diacritical marks or whatever, the vowel markings in Hebrew with the Masoretic text there. But I mean, that's like close as you can get, right? We didn't have tape recorders or anything like that back in the day. So you would assume that the language didn't drift too far away. However, if you try reading Victorian English, Shakespeare, when was Shakespeare around? Like 16? Was it earlier than that, 1600, or was it 1400?
I think it's 1600s, but I'm not certain.
Okay, so we're talking 400, 500, 600 years at most difference with the English language, and it has evolved significantly since then. It has changed significantly since then, to the point where if you try to read Victorian English or Shakespearean English, a lot of us like have to sit there and go, huh. Same thing is true for Arabic. Even when we talk to Muslim apologists and they're talking about Arabic, we're like, well, the way that we speak Arabic today is not the same as classical Arabic, right? They're like, oh, it's gone through a bunch of changes and we have a hard time really even comprehending what was going on in that particular time, which is problematic on its head, but that's not really the point. The point is just to say that language does change, the way that we speak changes, and that's just kind of how it goes. Are you still there, buddy? Oh, there you are. Okay, sorry, dude. You keep
Yeah,
glitching.
it
We keep
glitched out
glitching.
a second there. I'm having some bad internet issues today, I guess.
Okay.
But in any case, pronunciation is necessarily a big deal. I mean, you would expect words to be
Right.
pronounced differently in different languages. So
Mm-hmm.
that part I'm willing to give them. It's not the most natural letter combination for Muhammad, but
Mm-hmm.
if we ignore the context and we ignore that the fact this word has a meaning, I could see how it could be the same. It could be Muhammad.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't actually look at the passage itself, and I
Mm-hmm.
have heard some Muslims try to defend this. Um, you know, usually we'll point out that this is a woman talking about her betrothed. It's obviously not a prophecy. It's traditionally thought that the woman's talking about Solomon, but whether it's Solomon or someone else,
Mm-hmm.
it's only a contemporary to her. Uh, but they will point out that I have seen some Muslims point out, not anyone as dumb as Zakir Naik, but
He's a medical doctor. He is not dumb.
uh, yeah, I mean, he doesn't attempt to justify the passage at all. He just asserts it. But I have
Mm-hmm.
seen a couple Muslims try to justify it, and they'll go to verse 2 of chapter 5.
Okay.
Before she starts describing the figure, it says, "I slept, but my heart was awake. A sound, my beloved is knocking." Let's say, see, she's having a prophetic dream here. So how would you respond? Is she having a dream here, first of all? And is there any reason to believe it's prophetic?
I'm just gonna, if you want to pull it up, I'm gonna read it. I'm in the ESV right now, and we can just scroll through it together, right? So, I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh with my spice. I ate honeycomb with my honey. I drank my wine with my milk. Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love. So this is ESV, Song of Solomon 5. That was verse 1. Verse 2, I slept, but my heart was awake. A sound, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one, for my head is wet with dew, my locks with the drops of the night. So we'll pause right there, right? And so it says here, I slept. This would indicate that she slept. Now, I don't know if we want to dive deep into the Hebrew and see if that was past tense slept. It is clearly in English, slept. But it's kind of a weird language thing that it could mean both. But my heart was awake. A sound, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love. Right. So I don't know, Thaddeus. What do you think? I don't think there's going to be a real strong argument. I think you can make a good argument either way.
Well, yeah, I think that it's past tense, or at least appears to be past tense. You're right that the verb tenses don't necessarily match one to one between languages, but I think what she's saying is, I was sleeping and then I heard a sound. My beloved's at the door. I think that's what she's saying here.
Mm-hmm. Look, I try to be as charitable as possible, as always. You could make the argument based on what we've read so far. Look, she's asleep, but her heart is awake, right? We're saying she's sleeping, but her heart is awake. And in my dream, a sound, right? Meaning my heart was awake, but I was still asleep. And in this dream, it doesn't say it one way or the other. And it would be one of those arguments that you get in with someone, and there's really not a clear-cut right or wrong answer to it, unless you can dive into further context to figure out what's going on. What are your thoughts on it, man?
Well, yeah, I guess that makes perfect sense, what you said.
Mm-hmm.
However, we do have context, right? This
We
isn't the
do.
only passage in Song of Solomon, and the beloved figure is referred to several times.
Hmm.
So if we're going to say this is Muhammad, then we can't just look at this portion out of context. It means the whole book is about Muhammad. I would think. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I mean, it is a back and forth poem. It is a back and forth poem, meaning that, and it's between two main characters. It's between a male uh, loving a female, and he's speaking to her, and a female loving that same male, speaking back to him. So it's this back and forth love poetry happening. And so if Muhammad is the he, right, the male character spoken about here with the lovely mouth, um, then it would stand to reason, Thaddeus, that the rest of the he passages are either written by him or about him, if it's coming from the female's perspective, right? But that's another thing that would be interesting to dive into, because clearly the author, the narrator, one of the narrators in this story is the main character himself. So is this Muhammad himself writing about himself, if that's the argument that they're going with?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. The Muslim's going to have to help us out here. Is the whole thing being written by Muhammad now? Because you're right, it is back and forth. There's the passages which are marked as he, and the passages
Mm-hmm.
that are marked in as she. Obviously, the translator added that to help us, identify who's speaking.
Mm-hmm.
But it's clearly multiple speakers in this text, one
Right.
of which is the beloved,
Mm-hmm.
right? The beloved speaks in this text. So if it's a prophecy about the beloved,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the most generous interpretation. Maybe the entire book is written from written by neither the woman nor the man, and someone else is writing that this woman has a dream, and
Yeah.
that's why you can write about both figures. I mean, I'm trying to think of a way to make it work.
Yeah. Um, no, I mean, that's another interesting perspective to take on it. Maybe it's just kind of I don't want to say a fictional story, but it's a narrative story written to provide some deeper meaning or whatever it is, right? Like you can always take that as like it's just this third party writing about two people, made up characters about each other. You could take that perspective. I'm not sure I would hold to that perspective. In fact, I'm sure that I would not hold to that perspective. But if I'm trying to make an argument, maybe that's what I'm doing. Is, look, if I'm a Muslim, I might say, look, the author is writing love poetry, and it's included in the Bible because we're supposed to understand this in an allegorical way, to say that Muhammad is great and amazing and wonderful, and he's going to really take care of Jerusalem. I mean, that's kind of, I don't know. It's
All right, so we can't come to a conclusion about we're trying to find a way to make this work. I mean, we're trying to be
mhm.
generous to the Muslims here. We couldn't quite definitively rule it out, so maybe there's a tiny little door there. So let's just look at what this passage says. If this is about Muhammad,
Yeah,
then then it's about Muhammad. You can't just go to one verse and say, "See, Muhammad's name's in the Bible."
right.
So let's look here. The woman says, "Open to me." Oh, sorry, the beloved speaking.
Yeah,
"Open
the
to me,
beloved
my
knocks
sister,
it.
my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is wet with dew, my locks with the drops of the night." So if we're taking this as Muhammad, he knocks on some woman's door and he says, "Open the door for me. Um, my hair's wet." Does this
Hmm.
does this sound like anything in Islamic history that you're aware of?
No, I can't think of a single time besides when he bathed with dead dogs that his hair would have been wet.
And we don't know of when he went knocking on his beloved's door either. All right,
No.
that's too bad. Let's continue on. "I had put off my garment. How could I put it on? I had bathed my feet. How could I soil them?" So this is the woman speaking.
Hmm.
So she's saying, clearly she's saying, like, I'm not ready to greet him at the door. And
Mm-hmm.
then she starts describing the beloved. So let's see if this sounds like Muhammad here. My beloved put his hand to the latch, and my heart was thrilled within me. I arose open to my beloved, and my hands dripping with myrrh, my fingers with liquid myrrh on the handles of the bolt. So she's opening the door for him because she's excited that he's there. I opened to my beloved, and my beloved had turned and gone. My soul failed me when he spoke. I sought him, but found him not. I called him, but he gave no answer. So, again, does this sound like anything you're aware of? Did Muhammad go to some woman's door, and then she got up to answer it, and he had disappeared? So
Nope.
that's what's happening here. So if we're taking this as a prophecy about Muhammad, right, then this has to match Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just go start at verse 2 and then jump to verse 16. We have to read all of them, right?
I would hope so.
All right, let's continue on. Maybe it gets better here. The watchmen found me, and they went about in the city. They beat me, they bruised me, they took away my veil, as watchmen of the walls. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, tell him I am sick with love. So this unidentified figure that's related to Muhammad in some fashion,
Mm-hmm.
because the only way we can take this as a prophecy if the woman's also in Muhammad's time, right? So she goes out looking for Muhammad, and she gets beat up basically. And then she cries out, if you see Muhammad, because remember, my beloved is Muhammad. If you
Mm-hmm.
see Muhammad, tell him that I'm sick with love for him. Does that sound like anything you know of from Islamic literature?
Can't think of anything either, buddy.
Yeah, me either. Such a shame. We can't find any connection to Muhammad in this
Not
passage.
yet. Not yet. Let's have hope.
So then here it identifies as others. It's assumed to be the daughters of Jerusalem that she called out to. So, women who are living in Jerusalem, basically. What is your beloved more than another beloved? O most beautiful among women, what is your beloved more than another beloved that you thus adjure us? So they're like, you're kind of acting crazy here, lady.
Yeah.
Why is your man so exceptional that you're going out searching for him, crying out to us to help you find him, right? So now she's going to get to describing him. My beloved is radiant and ruddy, distinguished among 10,000. So do you know any where in the Hadith that Muhammad's appearance is described? You don't have to give me the exact Hadith, but what is he described like when he's described in the Hadith?
Man, I'm drawing a blank. You tell me, my friend.
Is he perhaps described as very white?
Oh, white. He's very white.
So,
like that, but yeah.
My English is not the greatest, but is white and ruddy synonyms?
No, I'm afraid not, Thaddeus. What the heck is going on? What is this? What is this nonsense?
Well, maybe those are just daif hadith.
Right. So, yeah, red color, right? I was double checking. I thought ruddy was that, but yeah, cheerful, pipe smoking man of ruddy complexion, so healthy red color.
Yeah, and
no, it's different.
As we go on, we're going to, I think, if I remember right here, we're going to see that he's rather dark in complexion, strangely enough. So let's continue on, verse 11. His head is the finest gold. His locks are wavy, black as a raven. Do you know anywhere where Muhammad was described as having black hair or wavy hair?
I do not recall any times, no.
There. Man, they're giving us all these clues, so we'll know that it's Muhammad, and none of the clues are matching up. Such a shame. I guess, these must be the corrupted parts.
They kept in the one little bit, but everything else, no bueno.
His eyes are like doves, beside streams of water, bathed in milk, sitting beside a full pool. Well, good news. We found some whiteness here, right? His eyes are very white.
His eyes are white, yeah.
I don't think there's any hadith that specifically brags about Muhammad's eyes being white, though.
Aren't most people's eyes white?
Yeah, I think all people's eyes are white.
Okay, unless they got some liver issues or something, but
Yeah. I think probably what she's saying is that he has very big and beautiful eyes that look
okay.
like doves. I think
Yeah,
that's probably what she's saying, which I'm not aware of anywhere where Muhammad was described that way either, sadly.
gotcha.
His cheeks are like beds of spices, mounds of sweet smelling herbs. Do you know anything where Muhammad's cheeks were described?
I can't recall any passages, no.
I do believe actually that there is a hadith that
Oh, really?
says that his cheeks were very white, strangely enough.
Yeah, we already mentioned the white part. I thought you were looking for something new, but
Well, I was just saying the cheeks,
yeah.
Although the hadith do describe Muhammad as, well, I was going to say they describe him as smelling good, but that's not actually accurate. What they actually describe is people gathering his sweat and
Hmm.
using it as perfume,
Yeah.
which I get implies maybe that he smells good.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
kind of like spices,
All
right?
right, let's go with it. Let's go with it. We got a hit. Let's keep rolling.
All right. His lips are lilies, dripping liquid myrrh. Um, I think that probably means he was a sweet talker.
Okay.
I don't think that's necessarily a literal description.
Yeah.
Um, was Muhammad known for sweet talk?
Depends on the perspective. I mean, his followers would say so, right? They'd say he was the most sweet talker in the history. He's the greatest. But and the Quran is a miracle or whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's more of a subjective attribute, or to say it's sweet. I don't know. He
Yeah,
said some pretty horrible
it's
things in my
very
opinion.
interesting that you mentioned the Quran there, because
Hmm.
so often when Muslims are trying to argue that Muhammad is a prophet, they'll say the Quran says X, Y, or Z. Like, not that Muhammad is a prophet, but like they'll say the Quran contains scientific miracles, or the
Hmm.
Quran has very beautiful language. But that wouldn't make Muhammad a prophet unless he wrote it, right?
Uh, I mean, wrote it, yeah, but at least spoke it, right? Like he was the third party in the revelation of it being turned into Arabic, a human language, right? So we got Allah giving it to Gabriel, Gabriel giving it to Muhammad, Muhammad giving it to the people, and then the people reciting it and taking it out. So I mean, in that sense, from their perspective, you'd be considered a prophet, I
Well, actually,
suppose.
that's fair,
Um,
because a prophet, actually, in the biblical definition, is one who speaks God's
mhm,
words. We've come to think of prophet as
yep,
someone who predicts the future, but really it's someone who speaks
right.
God's words.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Hmm.
I guess you're right. If the Quran comes from Allah, then and Muhammad revealed it, then that would potentially make him a prophet. So
Yeah.
I guess you're right. But my point was really that they often act like the Quran is Muhammad's words.
Hmm.
Um,
That's true.
they often have that little slip of the tongue there, where
Hmm.
they're trying to argue for Muhammad, and then they attribute to him things that are supposed to come from Allah.
That's true. You're about
And
to bury us here, though, buddy. Just so you know, if you
I
keep
know,
reading this, you're
I
about to
know, I
bury us.
know.
It's going to be over. Oh no.
So his legs are alabaster columns
Hmm.
set on bases of gold.
Hmm.
His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as the cedars. So, what do you think the woman is describing here?
She is describing the muscliness, at least I think, of his extreme his body, right? He's just a well built man, I think is what it's describing. What do you think here, buddy?
Yeah, I think that's what she's getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Lebanon was known for the cedars trees, which were the biggest and strongest trees of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yeah, she's describing that he's very muscular and strong.
Yeah, but
Um,
you didn't skip over the polished ivory part, did you?
oh, yes, I did.
Oh, you
I'm
can't skip
sorry.
that over, bro.
Man,
That's the most important. That's what I was telling you, man. If you skip this, you're gonna, you know.
yeah, I accidentally skipped verse 14, so let me go back. His arms are rods of gold set with jewels.
Mhm.
His body is polished ivory, bedecked with
Pause.
sapphires.
Pause. I'm Muslim apologist now, bro. What
Uh-huh.
color is ivory?
Yep, you're right. Ivory's
He
white.
was white. So I don't know. This could definitely be about Muhammad. But let's keep reading. What do you say?
Yeah, well, we do have some ambiguity there, though, right? Because his arms are gold, which is not very brightly white, and his body's polished ivory, which
Oh,
is white, but it's
yeah.
bedecked with sapphires. So that means he had blue spots all over his very white body.
Right. So okay.
So
So
you
let's
think maybe
let's.
she's saying something different
Dang
than?
it. Dang it, Thaddeus, man. I was getting real excited that maybe this was going to be about Muhammad because of the whiteness of ivory. But oh man, as it goes with the context, which is one of the Muslims' top 10 most hated words, it doesn't make any sense that it's describing the color because his arms are rods of gold set with jewels, right? So we're talking about a texture. We're talking about how valuable they are, right? So all of these things are based on textures and values, and they're metals and diamonds and things like that, right? His body is polished ivory. Ivory is a texture, right? So we're describing a smooth texture, not necessarily in color, but in the texture of that particular thing. It's bedecked with sapphires. His legs are alabaster columns. Again, we're talking muscular, we're talking solid, strong objects. And you're right. I mean, if we're going to assume that the polished ivory, right, is a white color, then we're going to have to assume that it's bedecked with, sapphires of blue, and then his arms are gold colored, and they have jewels somehow set in them. I think you're right, Thaddeus. I got my hopes up, but you've beaten me. You're the winner.
Yeah, I think that, she's describing how valuable he is here.
Mm.
And not describing his appearance per se,
Mm.
even though she says arms and body.
Right.
And then likewise with the legs that I accidentally already read, she's not describing necessarily that they look like cedars or the cat just bumped my screen. So let me.
Oh no. Right, but I mean, even here, right? So his legs are alabaster columns set on bases of gold. And then that's the end of the sentence. The next sentence is his appearance is like Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
Lebanon is a country,
Yes.
right? Um, so, yeah, I mean, clearly we're using allegorical language here to describe him, right? Choice as the cedars, right? Saying, look, he's a beautiful country. He's got great cedars. He's useful, whatever it is. So yeah, dang it. I was really trying to stick with the ivory bit, but we're just gonna have to move
And
on.
so now we're just going to have to come to the Muslim favorite verse here.
Mm-hmm.
His mouth is most sweet, and he is altogether desirable, or he is
Altogether lovely.
Mohammedim.
Mahmadim.
Yeah. So the altogether desirable is what's been translated from
Mm-hmm.
Mohammedim.
Mm-hmm. Right, and when we looked at the translation or the definition of the word mahmad, it was desired or desirable thing, right? So when we did that a while ago, that's what it was. Hence, why it's being translated as most sweet, right? So where do we get most from? Why does it say most at this point, Thaddeus, and not just his mouth is sweet?
Well, it's one word here in Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
So the same thing that's happening in the most sweet is also happening in the altogether desirable. They're both
Yeah.
actually nouns,
Yeah.
but we can't use nouns that way in English. So to translate it, they're making it into an adjective. So, but it really, I mean, literally it'd be like his mouth is sweet stuff. is I guess the best I can come up with
Yeah,
in English.
yeah.
And he is desirable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where desirable stuff is, has a hyphen in it because it's one word because it's a noun, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
um, but because we don't have an English noun that means desirable stuff
Mm-hmm.
or sweet stuff, that so they translate it as an adjective. But the most is there because it's clear from the context that she's describing him in very grandiose terms.
Word. Right. So his mouth is most sweet altogether. So this is my beloved, this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. So one question that I have on this is why suddenly, like, why are we talking about Jerusalem? What would, right, assuming this is Muhammad, what would Muhammad have to do with a courtship of love, apparently, with Jerusalem? Was there a love relationship between Muhammad and his followers and Jerusalem, the daughters of Jerusalem specifically? Like what kind of relationship did the Jewish people have to the Muslim people?
Well, actually, it depends on what time period we're looking at, right? Because
Okay. Yeah.
originally Muhammad was like, "Come on, Jews, come follow me," and then they said, "No, you're a false prophet." And then he said,
Mm,
"I hate the Jews. We will kill all the Jews." Uh, and by he, of course, I mean Allah,
right.
revealing this in the eternal
Hmm.
Quran. So this was
Hmm.
always the position. Muhammad just didn't know it.
They were always mad at him, but they were also his chosen people. But they were always mad at him.
But in context, why does she say that? Well, because remember, she was saying all of this to the daughters of Jerusalem who
Mhm.
asked what her beloved looks like, or actually,
Yeah.
they weren't really asking, for a physical description. They're like, "Why
Just
are
like,
you so
why do you think
enamored
he's
with
so
this?
great? Yeah.
Yeah, why are you so
Yeah.
enamored with this man?" And then she goes through all that, and then she said, at the end, she says, "This is my beloved. This is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem." Um,
Mhm.
Hey, another question for you there. Did Muhammad have any female friends that you're aware of?
Friends?
Yeah.
Like platonically friends?
Yeah.
No.
Like non-sexual relations.
Maybe his mother until she passed away. Like I have no idea. No, like no. Did he?
Yeah, I'm not aware of anyone in the Islamic literature either that could be considered a friend of Muhammad who was a female.
Yeah. Like legit, I cannot. Yeah. I mean, like you would assume like the wives of his companions like might be considered friends of his, but they're never, to my knowledge, mentioned at all. So I mean, the only female mentioned in the entire Quran is Mary by name. I mean, there's other females mentioned, but uh, Mary by name at least.
Yeah,
Um,
for some reason, Allah either doesn't know the names of any of the biblical females or he just doesn't care what their
he
names are.
doesn't
One or the
care.
other.
No, I'm going to go with he doesn't know. I think he would care to know, and he'd love to throw names out, but I think he started getting kind of nervous about his name picking and stuff like that, especially with Uzair being the son of the Jews declaring him to be the son of Allah. But who knows?
Yeah, and at least if we take the Hadith seriously, at some point the Jews came to him and they're like, "What are you talking about? Mary, the sister of Moses, is not the father of Jesus." And then he's
Well,
like, "Oh, don't worry about it. They just named people after figures of old." That's
yeah.
actually the official excuse in the Hadith.
No, that's the Hadith thing, and so it's a some famous historical person. We're gonna go with Aaron, sister of Aaron.
Yeah,
Okay.
the naming after. I mean that's fine, right? Well, it's
Yeah.
actually not if we look at first century naming practices, but in principle, right, it would be fine for someone who is named Mary to be have a brother who is named Aaron. Um,
Hmm.
However,
And the
why
father too.
just
You got to throw the father in
oh
there
yeah,
too.
yeah, and Father Amram,
Hmm.
that in principle that's plausible enough, right?
Yeah.
Except the Quran refers to her that way, and you're expected to know who this Aaron is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there is another other mention of an Aaron. It's the brother of Moses.
Oh yeah, there's that.
Plus, you were telling me earlier you had an interesting conversation with a Muslim who had the same mistaken idea as the author of the Quran, that no one can
Yeah.
have the same name, right?
No, yeah. So he's a I don't know if you want me to out
Yeah, you
him
don't need to
here
give his
since it
name.
was a
Yeah.
personal conversation, but it is someone that we all know very well here on this channel, and that's about as far as I will take it. But we did have a personal conversation on a Skype call for a good long while. And I can't remember exactly what had stimulated the conversation. He was saying some horribly blasphemous things in the chat. And I kind of went after him a little bit and finally just had enough. And I was like, we had exchanged texts, and I think we tried to call each other a couple times on Skype. So I just called him. I'm like, look, dude, like, what's your issue? Like, what's your malfunction? And he proceeded to talk to me about the issues that are within our Bible and how we can't trust the Bible, right? This was like a 2-hour conversation I think we ended up having. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really know what you're talking about. Give me an example. So he gives me an example. He goes, well, Matthew chapter 1, the lineage of Jesus. And we had talked about this, Thaddeus, so we'll just kind of go through the basic thing here. But actually, can you hear me still?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I don't know why. I was looking at a thing that looked like you were talking. Anyway, so whenever somebody starts to bring up the genealogy of Jesus, right? Like my first thought, and I think maybe one of your first thoughts, is you're going to go, oh, they're going to bring up that there's a difference between the lineage and genealogy of Jesus and the Gospel of Luke versus the Gospel of Matthew, right? Which we can address if need be. But he didn't go there. He went to a place that I have never in my life ever heard. And Thaddeus, I'm going to be curious if you've ever heard this before after I say it. He said, go to where it says that Joseph begot Jesus, which first and foremost, it doesn't say that. And then he goes, what is the name of Joseph's father? Like, well, it says it's Jacob. He goes, well, there's only one Jacob in the Bible, and there's only one Jacob who had a Joseph. So they're off by 1,400 years. So that was the conversation that we had. I had to explain to him that it is possible for a man named Jacob to name his son Joseph. It's totally possible, especially in a Jewish context, where if your name is Jacob, you're probably naming your kids after, you're going to name them Judah or Simon or, whatever one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And the real easy defeater to that argument was going to the first prior, right? Because it is going through the genealogy. So Thaddeus, help me out here. In the Old Testament, right, Jacob, who is later Israel, he does have a son named Joseph, but what was Jacob's father's name? Who is the
You put me on
father?
the spot here.
So who's the father of Jacob, right? Not in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, right? So Jacob fathers the 12 tribes of Israel. And then Jacob had a twin brother, and his father was whom? I'm trying to help you out here, buddy.
Why don't you just tell me? I'm drawing a blank.
All right, I'll tell you. Right. So his father was Isaac.
Yes,
Right.
of course.
So his father was Isaac. So if our Muslim friend were to be giving an appropriate response to this, and he was being intellectually honest, he could have just gone up to go, wait, are we talking about the same Joseph or the same Jacob who begat Joseph and then begat Jesus? Well, let's look at grandpa's name, right? Grandpa's name, let me see here, is, I was trying to get this pulled up. Joseph, son of David, behold, the virgin shall conceive. Call his name Jesus. All right. Sorry, I was trying to look it up here and oh wait, okay. Matan.
Mm-hmm.
Mathan, Mathan, is the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. Help me settle this argument post hoc here, Thaddeus. So he couldn't quite understand that he couldn't grasp that it was a different Jacob and a different Joseph than the Jacob and Joseph from the Old Testament. Couldn't figure that out, right? Refused to grasp it. Even though Mathan, right, is not Isaac. I would have agreed with him 100% if it was like Isaac, and I'd be like, wow, that is kind of weird. I've never seen that before. But then the second argument was he said this chapter says that Joseph is the father of Jesus in a biological sense. Okay.
No.
I'm going to read this, and I don't know if you're I'm going to read this. So this is Matthew 1, chapter 16. Or sorry, not chapter 1, verse 16. And Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. I'm going to read this one more time, slowly. And Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. So there's a word in here, of whom, right? Whom being the specific person that Jesus was born to. Okay, I'm going to have you focus on the word whom. I'm going to read it one more time, Thaddeus, and you're going to help us.
All right.
And I'm just doing this for my own sake, because sometimes I feel like when I'm getting gaslit, I just need someone to be like, no, you make total sense.
Okay.
You're not, so you're going to help us all out here. And Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born. So is the whom speaking about Mary, whom Jesus was born to, or is it Joseph, whom Jesus was born to?
Well, I pulled up the Greek, and Greek has this very handy feature.
I did the exact same thing.
Gender.
Yeah.
And it is gendered, and it's gendered feminine.
Okay. So Jesus came from whom?
Oh, well, clearly Mary. But I
Yes.
also want to point out that, even if it said, Joseph, right? Like, even if it said that it was Joseph's son, notice how it's father of, father of, father of, father of. And then it uses some strange phrase of whom Jesus was born, i.e., it's showing that there's a difference here, right? Yes. It's showing that something different has taken place than just being the father of someone.
Yep. Yeah, because there's a big difference, like the in the Hebrew, I believe it says like beget, 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 and out of whom. I don't know if you can pull up that tab, or I don't know what you were looking at with the gendered stuff.
Oh, yep. So let me share my screen.
Bo Rudder says, I have two friends named David, and they are not the same person. That's what I tried to tell him. I tried to tell him that. He couldn't figure it out. Nope. Now there's 2 million of me. Thaddeus, what are you sharing, bro? Are you still there, buddy? Anyhow, can you guys hear me? I don't know if I'm only by myself. Anyhow, and I think we're on a bit of a lag, or actually I need to zoom in, speed up. Okay, here we go. Yes, okay, so I am still going. So the reason why I was giving that as an example is because that particular person just kept harping and harping and harping on all of this stuff. And he was trying to say that the Bible is corrupted and all this. And so this is amazing what I was able to do with the conversation with him. And it's exactly what we've been going through in this series. I said, oh, okay, are you basing the reliability of the New Testament and the Bible on what like secular scholars are saying, or are you taking them as your ultimate authority? Or do you think that the Bible is the Quran is your ultimate authority? I'm like, if one contradicts with another one, which one are you going to go with? And of course, as a good Muslim, he said, look, I'm going to go with the Quran. The Quran is the direct speech of Allah. It's the true word of God. There is no way, shape, or form that it could possibly ever at all be incorrect. So we're going to put a pin in that for a second because Thaddeus is back, and he's going to show us kind of the gendered stuff here. So go ahead, brother. It looks like you're on mute. If you want to hit the mute button. For whatever reason,
Yeah,
I can see. There we go. That makes a
you
difference.
joined muted by default. So this time it was not the internet. This time the cat jumped on my keyboard and it closed the window.
Oh, that's funny.
Which is my fault because I normally close the door before I start broadcasting, and I forgot to do that today. So anyway, so we have on the screen now the text here. So I have whom highlighted. You can see here, this is the Greek hos, and it is a pronoun, relative pronoun. It is genitive, it is singular, and it is feminine.
And then, wait a tick. If we go back to Mary, right? Is that the one we're going to need to link that with?
Yes. Oh. Yeah. So Greek doesn't necessarily have word order, so you can't necessarily tell who this goes to from the word order. You have to find a feminine noun in the sentence. Look, noun, genitive, singular, feminine.
We don't need to follow rules though, Thaddeus. But yeah, that's exactly what I showed him. What was funny about it, Thaddeus, is I sent him the link through Skype. I took screenshots, photos of it. He just refused. He literally refused to look at it. He refused to look at it.
Very intellectual there. We did get a little bit off.
Yeah. A little bit?
Yeah. So why did I ask you about that again? Oh, right. Because Muhammad could only think of, he heard two people named Mary and he thought they must be the same person. And then the Muslim, following the example of his prophet, as he's supposed to, here's two people named Joseph and he assumes they must be the same person.
Yeah. You can't make it up, man.
So getting back to, taking us way back to where we were actually talking about the passage in question, we just read through this description and, we didn't see a lot of semblance to Muhammad. And this is supposed to be a prophecy of Muhammad in the most generous interpretation possible, a prophetic dream. So do you think, all things considered, that this woman is thinking of the Islamic prophet Muhammad?
This to me is as laughable as the shirk in Deuteronomy 32. It really is. There are a vast amount of logical fallacies that someone has to jump through, to ignore, and to dance around in order to even make this sound coherent. It is a completely incoherent position. One, they're using the fallacy of saying, look, this phonetically sounds like Muhammad in another language. Okay, there are lots of examples of words that would be considered cuss words in one language that mean some sort of blessing in another language, right? Just because the human mouth can only make so many different sounds, right? So many different syllables from one language to another language, there are going to be similar sounding words, but the meaning of those particular words are going to be different. The second thing that we have to talk about is consistency of argumentation. Are you willing to apply the same standards across the board? And are you willing to accept those same standards? If you are willing to accept those same standards, great. Okay, let's roll with it. If Mahmadim is a name, then the root word Mahmad is also going to be the same name, the same person who this particular passage is describing. We use the story at the beginning to show the absurdity of what it is like if you don't use double standards, right? If you use same standards, that's the reality that you're going to have to accept. And it is absolutely absurd and laughable. It really is pretty funny. The other one is the time traveling fallacy. That I just made that up. I don't think that's a real thing. But we have to imagine that this Muhammad character is some sort of time traveling shape shifter, and using the consistency and not double standards. We just realize that it's one of those things that, okay, that's interesting, right? When you hear Zakir for the first time and you don't know that he's hilarious, and you think when he says medical doctor, it means that he's an intelligent, well-spoken, well-articulated, highly integritous individual. You hear him say, look, this says Muhammadim, and this is what it means, and his mouth is lovely, and he goes into this whole speech. It might be convincing to some people. But when you actually take 30 minutes to look into it, it becomes completely absurd, completely hilarious, completely laughable. Add on top of that this is Song of Solomon, not Song and Law of Moses. We've just reached a point where it just can't possibly be. So I'd be curious to see kind of what your final thoughts are about it, Thaddeus.
Yeah, well, so I have two things from the chat. You can address this one quickly. Is Mo in the Pentateuch? Muslim apologists claim he's in Song of Solomon and Isaiah. So see parts 1 and 2 of the series.
Yeah. So when this person knows Pentateuch is the first 5 books, right?
I assume so.
Okay. Yeah. So go ahead and read or go back to our previous videos. We covered in the Pentateuch, in Deuteronomy 18:18, we covered that chapter where Muslims claim he is, and Deuteronomy 32 where Muslims claim he is. Those are the only 2 places Muslims have ever claimed to find Muhammad within any books attributed to Moses, right? The rest of them are outside of the Pentateuch. So this is the first one outside the Pentateuch, and actually the majority of them are outside the Pentateuch. So
yes. So then we'll close out on this. So we've talked a lot about what the text is not saying, and it's not a prophecy about Muhammad. It's not a description of some future prophet. But Snowflake said, what is your understanding of the text? So what is your understanding of the book of Song of Solomon in general, and in particular, this passage in chapter 5?
I'm a little bit more of a literalist in this particular sense, right? Not in the fact that this doesn't use very obvious allegorical language. That's not what I mean. But I believe that this is a literal love poem, right? It's a, in my opinion, a beautiful poem, a display of proper and great love between a man and a woman, and it is something that God has ordained for us to be able to enjoy together. And I think it's amazing that he uses that in this thing to describe that. However, there are lots of different opinions about the Song of Solomon. Thaddeus, I'm sure you're familiar with at least some of them. I'm not convinced by most of them, but there are interesting points of it. A lot of people will say, well, this is more of a allegorical love story between a bride and a groom, and the language used is completely allegorical. It's basically a parable, and the groom is like maybe Jesus, and the bride is maybe the church, and they kind of go through this little thing, which some people believe. And Thaddeus, I don't know what you think about it. Other people don't. I personally, I'm willing to be convinced otherwise, but I find it kind of hard to think about it in the way that it describes, like with frolicking in the lilies and all those kinds of things. I think it's just genuinely a love story between a husband and his wife.
And I would concur. I
Okay.
believe that this text is exactly what it appears to be on the
Hmm.
surface, that it is actually a series of love poems. That's why the alternate name is Song of
Yeah.
Songs, because there's multiple songs within
Hmm.
the book. But it's a series of love poems that are loosely organized into, sort of a narrative, but not really. There's not much of a narrative. It's mostly just a collection of love poems.
Hmm.
And now, in fairness, as you mentioned, people do take it allegorically. And that's not such a popular interpretation anymore. Most people actually are more on the literal side nowadays. But
Hmm.
there is a long history of the church taking it this way. And this is the way that ancient Jewish people took it as well, at least during the Christian era, which of course is already well after the text is written, so they don't necessarily have any greater connection to its original purpose. But basically, sensibilities made people think that this language was inappropriate for the Bible, which ironically, Muslims will, even though they want to go here to
Hmm.
find Muhammad's name. If they're not going here to find Muhammad's name, they're going here to show us how the Bible contains pornography. If they think this passage is pornographic, they have no clue what pornography is. But in any case,
According to Pakistan statistics, a lot of Muslims do know what pornography is.
yeah. I mean, it's just a silly argument, of course.
Hmm.
I'm sure that everyone in the Muslim world is like just everyone anywhere else who knows what pornography is, whether or not they personally partake in it.
Right.
But because of those sensibilities, because it being rather graphic, rather strong language, people were offended by it and they didn't think it belonged in scripture, which is why the allegorical interpretation arose. Now, generally, Christians will accept that there's the possibility of multiple meanings, right?
Layers. Yeah.
So even if it is a literal love poem, it could also have an additional allegorical meaning. But I think when you deny that it has when you deny the clear meaning of the text, you're not really doing the text any favors. Let's put it that way.
True story. No, I think that's good. I don't know if Snowflake had any other questions or anything like that. I know Khalik Sayed, or yeah, go ahead and get to that one that you just pulled
Yeah.
up.
So John says it's both, in my opinion, a parable. That's true. I think the allegorical can be taken too far, but I'm not an expert on it. Song of Solomon is the book in the Bible that I am least familiar with. Common thing to be not that familiar with it. It's not a text that's used a lot. I think that might be to our loss, though, because I think it does have a lot to say to our current culture,
Hmm.
which does not properly understand sexuality, does not properly understand, male-female relations. So I think it might be to our detriment that we don't look at it very often, but definitely, you're not in the minority there when you say it's one of the least familiar books for you of the Old Testament or the Bible in general.
Word. I was gonna
Yep.
say,
So
yeah, go ahead, buddy.
you wanted to take that comment from Khalid that says, "Dude,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how much longer you wanted to be with this. I
yeah,
mean, we
no,
can, we
yeah,
can.
we can definitely take this."
Okay.
We're now in a more. If people have any questions about Song of Solomon, by all means, we'll take those. But
Hmm.
if Muslims, I'm assuming Khalid here is a Muslim, want to challenge us on something else, they're welcome to do so at this time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do Christians accept Jesus as God by necessity? Otherwise, they would not be a Christian. Next question.
Yeah, well, I said, of course, in the chat. He didn't follow up. That was a while ago. So I don't
Well,
know if
and
that
then
was.
later, Iqbal Swati showed up out of nowhere. So,
Yep, Iqbal's here,
cameras,
misspelling my name. Shame on him. That one I can forgive though.
not on purpose.
Because my name, hard to spell.
Yeah.
But when he misspells Jesus, I know he's doing it on purpose. So this
Hmm.
one, I don't know. He maybe just misspelled it by accident. But don't misspell the name of Jesus, or we won't take you seriously. Oh,
a follow-up
oh,
question.
Khalid does have a follow-up question.
And I
My
don't know if you
follow-up
want to.
questions.
I don't know if you want to have him. I don't know if you have
Yeah,
time
yeah,
for a
yeah.
link or
I'll
whatever.
put.
It might be easier just to chat with him.
Yep, yep.
That way we could get some clarification on what he's actually asking. Um, so this is a very common line of questioning that Muslims like to go through, right? So they think they're going to give you this big gotcha, right? Oh, do you claim that Jesus is God? And you say yes, and then usually they're going to ask you a second question before they ask you this next question. Well, then that means you believe that Jesus is the God of the Old Testament too, right? All the commandments. They're going to bring up, killing babies. They're going to bring up, genocidal types of things, and they're going to bring up slavery. They're going to bring up all of these different things, which I fully expect. That is what Khalik Syed is planning on doing. So I'm just going to kind of go through your little game that you're playing here, Mr. Khalik Syed. Do Christians accept Jesus killed humans? Yes, we believe that Jesus, not in the human form sense of Jesus, but Jesus as the Logos, the Word of God, is the judge of the world, has been the judge of the world eternally, and has always been acting alongside and with simultaneously the Father and the Holy Spirit, forever in the past and forever in the future, judging all mankind. And part of judgment is required as punishment as well. So I have exactly no problem whatsoever telling you that, yes, that's what Jesus has done. And yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Thaddeus.
Well, notice the problem that he's trying to set up here. He's trying to set up that we'll say that we might mistakenly answer no, or if we say yes, then we'll say he'll say what kind of prophet is that, or something along those lines. But notice what he's excluding. He's excluding the possibility that what his first question asked, that Jesus is God and therefore he is the rightful judge over humanity. Something that Muslims would agree with as long as they're clearly talking about God. They would say, absolutely, Allah has full authority to take human lives if he so chooses.
Yeah.
And then we'd say, Jesus has full authority to take a human life. And they'd be like, what do you mean? I thought he was a nice guy. Don't Christians love everyone?
Yeah, correct. But what's the old the 90s song? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Okay, so but the real question here, guys, is, and I'll try not to get too deep in it, but the real question is, what is love? Right? So in First John, I can't remember the exact passage, but in the first letter of John, it says that God is love. And so the next question we have to ask is, what is love? And everything that we read throughout the Bible is an exemplification and a demonstration of God being love and what love actually does, right? If you're offended by this love, you're not understanding that love is not just forgiving and allowing evil to perpetuate, right? Allowing it to grow, allowing one child that you love to murder and destroy another child that you love. No, love is a part of love is justice, right? Justice for the oppressed. A part of love is also mercy. A part of love is all of these things. So if we read the Bible through the lens of understanding that God is love, then a lot of these questions that people are bringing to us can be answered, at least in my mind, pretty simply and pretty easily.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if we'll get another comment from him. I mean, it took him like 5 minutes to write that last one, so I don't want to like sit around for 5 minutes waiting for him to give another follow-up question. Khalik, if you're watching, then I suggest you click the link and come up live. You obviously are not a great typer, which, nothing wrong with that. But we can't be waiting 5 minutes in between each response. John said it's also kind of odd that Muslims would take offense with this book, considering the more examples set by the most perfect prophet of mankind, presumably referring to the sexual language of Song of Solomon, but also could be referring to the violence of the Old Testament. So yeah, what are they complaining about?
Right. Well,
They don't see a problem when their God does it, but
correct. And I actually don't think that that's the angle that most Muslims take. Sorry, I'm trying to get this thing adjusted. I think the angle that most Muslims are taking when they do that is called the tu quoque fallacy. Yeah, I know, but you also. So I don't think they're actually trying to say that what the Old Testament or whatever they're supposedly offended by, or what you're assuming they're offended by, is wrong. What they're trying to say is you cannot say that whatever I'm doing is wrong, or whatever Muhammad did was wrong, or whatever Allah did was wrong. That's their position. That's what they're trying to say. They're saying you can't say that because you believe in a book that says the exact same thing. So why are you sitting here passing judgment on my book when you, if you hold up a mirror to yourself, have the exact same problem as well? Okay. I don't know how you handle that, Thaddeus. I could go on about it a little bit, but I'd be curious to see how you handle those types of responses.
yeah, well, in this case, he was the one who brought it up, which was the strange thing, because he wasn't. I see what you're saying, because that probably is ultimately where he's coming from. But they usually wait till we make the accusation first instead of bringing it up. But no, they answer the substantive question. How do you respond when you're pointing out a moral problem with Muhammad or even Allah, and they just say, well, but in the Bible, X, Y, and Z. Well, I always say, is the Bible true? Is it authoritative? Do you believe it? If not, then why are you quoting it? And if you do, then why are you a Muslim? And if they're trying to argue Christianity is false, I just cut them off and say, if Christianity is false, that doesn't make Islam true. Do you have any reason to believe Islam's true?
Right. No, 100%. That's a great response. One of my favorite ways to talk to somebody when we actually get into a healthy discussion is to say, look, point out that there are irreconcilable differences between Christian theology and Muslim theology, right? You can't harmonize them. There's irreconcilable differences. We both can't be right. So it's one of three things. Either the Muslim side is correct and the Christian side is incorrect, or the Christian side is correct and the Muslim side is incorrect, or they're both wrong. Right. And so in my experience, saying, look, one of us is right, one of us is wrong. Right. And that breaks down a lot of walls, I think, for some people. Other people, when they think you're being weak, they're just going to attack you, and that's fine. But it brings barriers down. It brings walls down, saying, look, I'm not even saying that I'm 100% right. I may believe I'm 100% right, and I believe that you believe that you're 100% right. But let's be honest. Two people who believe 100% that one person is right and the other person is wrong, they both can't be, right? It just, facts being these two things cannot be both true simultaneously. And at the same time, look, you could be wrong, I could be wrong, we could both be wrong. And that tends to break down some barriers, I think, and then open up some better lines of communication. It's typically not going to happen on a stream like this, by the way, but it will happen in your personal life. So if you do actually get to know a Muslim personally, I truly believe that this is one way that you will be able to communicate better with them. Right? It's a form of humility. It's a form of seeking together, because you're both working together to uncover the truth, as opposed to working separately to try to tear down each other's worldviews. It's going, look, no, I see this as a problem in your religion. You see this as a problem in my religion. Let's look at it together and let's come to a conclusion. All right.
Yep. So Swati said that he was currently working and he was only on a brief break, so he couldn't join us. But he said, next time we will discuss, is Muhammad in the Bible? He misspells Bible on purpose, after I've told him not to do that many times. But my response, Iqbal, that's what this whole series is on. So maybe get ready. come talk to us next time, because this is fourth show now. We have invited responses. And
got no responses.
yeah, strangely, even though he was on a 5-minute break and he couldn't talk, he's still here. Did Jesus said that he is the prophet? I don't know what that
Prophet
means.
like Moses is what he's trying to say.
You think? I mean, maybe.
I'm pretty sure.
All right, we'll go with that. See episode 2.
Yep.
Where we discuss the prophet like Moses.
That's good. Yeah, we don't have to get into it anymore, do we? We can just go see reference episode 2. Beautiful.
But I will make an exception. If Iqbal wants to come talk to us live, we'll discuss a passage that we already discussed.
Let's do it, man. Let's make it happen. In the meantime, if you don't mind, Thaddeus, for me pulling up what John Hildebrand said, if God truly is a single unit, do you see that up there?
Yep.
All right. This is beautiful. I think I didn't read all of it. But all right. Well, because he's making, so if God truly is a single unit, he could not have loved until, he's making the same argument that I make. This is beautiful. This is a beautifully wonderful way, and I made this argument against Yahya, one of your other favorite ex-Muslim apologists. We had a debate on which is greater, Tawheed or Trinity, right? And this was the main argument that I was trying to make. And John, I think you've probably heard this or thought of it yourself as well. So if God is truly a single unit, he could not have love until he created something to love. I like to call this the problem of contingency with a Unitarian deity, right? Now, if this Unitarian deity is not described as having the attribute of love, there is no problem, right? However, if this Unitarian deity is described as having the attribute of love, then there is a big problem. The reason being is having love, right? Having an attribute of love, which is greater, Thaddeus? Having it with yourself for eternity, sharing it with no one, giving it, not receiving it, just holding on to it. Is that greater than, is that akbar than having it with 2 persons or 3 persons, right? So let's start with 2 persons. Which is greater, a love shared or a love given and received between 2 people, or a love held on to selfishly? Which is greater?
I think that everyone would agree, at least unless they knew what context you were asking and thus were playing games. Anyone would agree, if you're talking about, say, 2 human beings, that love not only is better when it's shared, it actually requires someone to share it with. You can't really just love without an object.
Okay, great. I'm gonna add one other thing in here. So, and you use the family unit, you use kind of 2 human beings loving each other. So we'll use an analogy of a family unit. So a father and a mother love each other, right? They give love, they receive love, right? This back and forth loving thing, but they don't love something that they both love simultaneously. So if they have a child, let's say, again, this is completely allegorical. Don't start linking this to Trinity. I'm not making this as a reference. I'm making it as a point of greater love, okay? So we've got 2 people who love each other, right? Back and forth love, greater than one person loving themselves. We've already established that, right? If you add a third party into it, person A, person B, and person C, person A and B back and forth love with each other, right? And they can share a love towards another, right? And with the minimum, Occam's razor, the minimum of 3 people, you have, you can have selfish love, you can have selfless love, and you can have shared love, right? If you add a 4th person, it doesn't add anything to the situation. If you add a 2 millionth person, it doesn't add anything to the situation. The 3-person understanding of love is the greatest exemplarily action that could ever possibly exist as love altogether. Okay, so if I'm a Unitarian deity, and let's say I have love, I do not have the ability to express my love. I cannot turn that love into action. I cannot have reciprocal love. I cannot have shared love. I cannot have selfless love until, that's why I call it the contingency argument for love, until I create something, meaning that my ability to express a key attribute of who I am is limited by creation. Therefore, my love and the ability to express it becomes dependent, contingent upon creation. That is not a problem in Trinitarian theology. That is not a problem with the true God of the Bible. That is not a problem at all, because eternally God exists as one substance, three persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You have selfish love, selfless love, shared love, all together without any contingency on creation whatsoever. So when we talk about Akbar between the Tawheed or Unitarian model of God and the Trinity model of God, the Trinity model of God is far superior in multiple ways, but my favorite argument to use is for the love way. So John, thank you so much for that comment, man. I think you get it. Hopefully I expressed it well enough for you. But that's a powerful argument in my humble opinion. What do you think that is?
Yeah, I agree completely that the Christian conception of God, the God described in the Bible, is not dependent on his creation for or anything really, right?
Correct.
He's not dependent on his creation.
Right.
The God described in the Quran, or at least the God that Muslims believe, since the two aren't necessarily the same thing, is very much dependent on his creation because he can't express his attributes without it.
Correct. And here's another argument on top of that. If you go to a website like Quran X or something like that, and you do a word search in the Quran for love, okay, I actually think it's in there 100 times exactly. It's been a few months since I've looked it up. And you read every single verse where the word love is in there. Every single time the word is love. Anytime it's in relation to God and man, guess how many times it says that Allah loves someone first?
I have not done the exact count, but I'm still pretty sure it's 0.
It is actually 0. Like in every single count, when you do a word search through the Quran, where love and a human being are in relation, Allah only loves those who love him first. Think about that. Think about this Almighty, right? This Almighty, this doesn't need anything, doesn't, self-sufficient, all that kind of blah, blah, blah stuff that Muslims like to tout. And yet your God is unable to, or at least is unable to demonstrate that he is able to or capable of loving someone who does not love him first. Whereas the Bible explicitly says the only reason we can love is because God loved us first, and that God is love. There truly is no more beautiful statement, in my opinion, than that, right? And especially that the truest expression of love is that one will lay down his life for a friend, and Jesus calls us his friend and his children. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Absolutely. The contrast couldn't be more stark, right? The Muslim God only loves because others love him. Our God, or we're in Christianity, we're only capable of love because God first loves us. Exact opposite.
Yeah. So who's more powerful? The one who gives us the ability to love, or the one who only loves that if we love them first? I mean, come on. Allah is contingent upon his creation. End of story. Exo facto, he's not God.
So now Iqbal's asking if he can join. Well, yeah, the link is pinned and I invited you to join. So go ahead, click on the link.
All right. I don't know. While we were waiting on him, the lead had my favorite.
Yes.
The Jesus said he didn't come to change the law.
Yeah, I was going to pull that up, and here we go. So I did tell them that he needed to click on the link and join us, because we can't be having a conversation like this.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I was going to bring this up anyway. Jesus said he didn't come to change the law, not even an atom's weight. When he didn't stone the woman, did he committed a sin by not obeying the law? So he's actually going slightly different place than Muslims usually go. He's referring, of course, to the woman caught in adultery. And he says, whoever is without sin can pick up stones and cast the first stone.
Okay. Do you want to take this, Thaddeus, or want me to take it?
I'll just comment very briefly, and
Okay.
then I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. Notice that he didn't say that that wasn't the rightful punishment under the law, which is what Khalid's interpreting here. He's saying that we are all guilty. He is modeling a type of forgiveness that we all need, right? If we're all to be judged by the law, we're all in the same position where this woman, where we deserve to be put to death. Not everything is intended to be taken literally.
Also, the law says that there needs to be witnesses to the adultery. And there was no claimed, at least, witnesses to the adultery. So that's also part of it.
Yeah. The text says that she's caught in adultery, but we don't know the whole story. Where's the man? The text says the man and woman should be put to death.
Yeah,
there's
that's
no man there. By the text, I mean the Mosaic law says the man and woman should be put to death. There's no man present. We don't know if the proper, well, we can assume the proper law procedure was not followed. There was no trial. There was no court order for her to be put to death. So the crowd has, in this very instance, acted outside of the law in their attempt to enforce the law. So a lot's going on here, is the gist of it. And he's trying to say that Jesus wasn't obeying the law. Well, no, the law never gave anyone permission to pick up stones and stone a woman of their own accord. And that's what you're saying, that the law he broke because he didn't stone her personally. No, that's not how the Mosaic law worked.
Exactly.
And also, Jesus didn't say that he didn't come to change the law. That part is false as well. It doesn't relate to the second half. He tried to throw it together because he's told to say that, but it doesn't actually relate. Those are two different things you're getting at.
Yeah, and we did a whole series on the the most common one they're going to say is from Matthew 5, Sermon on the Mount. So we actually did a whole series on the Sermon on the Mount, morality versus Muhammad's morality or Muslims' morality. And you can check that out as well if you are genuinely interested in getting answers to these tough questions.
And Marion said the same thing that I just said, that Jesus didn't really say that he was misunderstanding Jesus. And he said John 8:7, which I'll pull up. Okay, so that is actually just the passage of her being called an adultery. So apparently Khalid misunderstood. He thought that we were saying that Jesus didn't say the woman could go free, but that's not what Marion was saying, and that's not what I just said either. That passage is irrelevant to the claim that Jesus said that he didn't come to change the law. So let's see. Iqbal said he wanted to join several minutes ago. He is not here. I can see that he's not backstage.
So he tried Skyping you?
He has not. We'll give him another minute or two. But since Khalid brought it, or Khalid mentioned it without it being relevant to his argument, when Jesus says that he came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it, does that mean I have come to not change the law?
No, it does not. It does not mean that. It means that he came to fulfill the law. And it's really important that people understand what words mean. So the word fulfill means what? What does that mean, Thaddeus?
Well, I thought it was hard to give a definition for a basic term that everyone knows, but let me try to think of how to describe fulfill. So fulfill means to show to. I'm trying to do it without saying the word fulfill. To do all the things that were required of the law. There you go.
Yeah. So fulfill, to my best of definition, is to complete something. The best way to look at this is to think about the completion of a fulfillment. I have fulfilled my contract. I have fulfilled my duty. I have fulfilled whatever. I filled up my gas tank, or I know it's not fulfilled, but I filled up my gas tank. It is topped off. There's nothing more that we could do, right? But let's look at this in terms of the law, right? Because the law between Israel, the law was given between Israel and Yahweh. Okay, so Yahweh, yeah, correct, Villainous, to complete the finalize. So the law between Israel and Yahweh is a covenant, right? It is a covenant. It is actually instantiated through blood sacrifice. By the way, all of the covenants were and are. And in the Old Testament, I believe Jeremiah 31:31, and I think a passage in Ezekiel as well talks about how that God will bring a new law, right? So God is going to bring a new law, not like the laws of our forefathers. I think that's Jeremiah 31:31. And promises that the laws will be written on our hearts, and he will remove our hearts of stone and give us a heart of flesh in the new covenant. Jesus Christ himself says at the Last Supper to drink the wine and to eat the bread, because that is the blood and the body of the new covenant, and he is giving it for the forgiveness of sins, so that we will have a new heart and a new mind. Like, you can't make this stuff up, guys. This is continually throughout the entire Old Testament. So when Jesus says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets," I did not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them, right? So that is how we would answer that particular question. Christ came to fulfill the law, right? When I have completed a contract, I have fulfilled that end of the bargain, right? Israel up until that time had not perfectly held up their end of the bargain, whereas of course Yahweh did. That's why he sent Christ to fulfill it for us as a humble servant, so that he would fulfill the law perfectly, thus saying, look, the contract is up. If I have a contract to build a barn, right? I build the barn, you pay me the money. I'm not going to keep building your barn after I've built the barn, and you're not going to keep paying me the money after I've built the barn and you've paid me. So therefore, that contract is complete, fulfilled, and then I can go, well, I like that barn. Let's build another barn, right? Whatever, we can go on and on about that. But the point being is that is how I like to do that, and that was in the series. I think somebody asked what was the series. I believe it was just called Muhammad or Morality Song.
Yeah. So the first episode, Jesus versus Muhammad, who taught the better morals.
Okay.
And the second one, the reason we do good, Jesus versus Muhammad.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if that's on a playlist on your channel. I think I've got it on a playlist on my channel too. But either way, and did you put it? Oh yeah, you put it up there. Never mind.
Yeah, I put the link to the first one in the
Beautiful.
Chat. So it doesn't look like we're going to be joined by Iqbal, who changed his story from "I can't because I'm at work" to "Can I join now?" And then I told him yes, and come on.
Yeah.
What a shame. But Marion put it, you had that long explanation, which was fine. It was good. I'm not saying there's something wrong with it. But Marion showed you up and just did it in one sentence. A fulfilled law is the opposite of a broken law.
That's good. All right, Miriam, you're up next. I'm gonna retire, and we're gonna send you in my spot. You get a channel with like 13 followers, but you know it's a good start. Let's go ahead and do that.
Oh, so Khalid did follow up. He said, shouldn't Jesus throw the first stone since he was without sin? And buddy, why don't you listen to what we actually said? That's not how the law worked. There's no provision in the Mosaic law for someone to personally exercise judgment and justice. So no, he would not be following the law to do that, nor is there any requirement in the law for an individual to do this, nor has the woman been properly tried, nor is that the purpose of the story. So you listened to literally nothing we said and just went on to the next line of your Dawa script, which was already been answered.
And Jesus is God and the rightful judge and has the ability and authority to forgive when people repent.
And then he just now said, why say it then if it's not the law? Rewind, play back. It's literally the very first thing I said as to why he said that. Here's a one sentence summary. Because we all fall short of God's glory. We all need forgiveness. He's modeling that forgiveness. It's an enacted parable.
Mm-hmm.
Islam Mentira Overdad asked if she could join. Sure. Come on up if you like, Roof. But be quick, because otherwise we're just sitting here in silence.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other interesting things to filibuster until they call in. So Isaiah 42:21, the Lord is pleased for his righteousness. He shall magnify the law and make it honorable. So absolutely. Amen. And when you do go back to the Sermon on the Mount, right? So Jesus is taking the law of Moses. He's going through basically the 10 commandments. And he's saying, you've heard them say this, do not commit adultery. I say to you, right? This is magnifying the law. I say to you, if you even look at a woman with lust in your heart, you have already committed adultery. Same thing with hatred, right? It says, thou shalt not murder. I say to you, do not even hate your brother, because if you do, you are guilty of the same sin. So Christ came, magnified the law, fulfilled the law. Yeah, I mean, I'll try to keep it short, Thaddeus, but maybe Marion can give us a 2. I know I'm messing with you too. Give us like a 2-second answer for it. But I just think it's a beautiful thing, right? Because Muslims try to come up and they try to say that, look, Jesus, like you Christians think that Jesus just said, do whatever you want. I died for your sins. No worries. Sin, go out the bars, do drugs, steal, kill, destroy. That's what they think. And in fact, that's just a very inappropriate misunderstanding and a misapplication of what's actually being said in the Bible. I mean, many will come to me and say, Lord, this is the same chapter. Did we not prophesy in your name, perform many miracles in your name? And he says, depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. I never knew you. We can get into that in a little bit. Is what's Islam Miranda Overdad? What's their name?
Ruth.
Oh, it's Ruth. Okay.
Yeah.
Did they call?
No. But we do have a new Muslim.
I noticed that.
Ahmed says, when God is not one, he is not God. The only message of Islam. Really? That's the only message of Islam. Hey, before I read the rest of his comment, let's just stop there. So I'm going to phrase this to Ahmed, but I'm going to have you answer Astriv since Ahmed's not here. Does Islam teach anything besides there is one God?
Do you want me to be a Muslim? Is that what you said? I'm sorry.
Yeah. You just answer, briefly. So does Islam teach anything? I mean, he said this is the only message of Islam, that God is one. That's the only message of Islam.
Oh, no, brother. God is not only one. That's great. But you also have to follow all of the prophets and believe all of the books. And you have to do good deeds. You have to fast. You have to do the 5 pillars and 6 pillars and 28 pillars. And you have to do all of these things. Just believing that there is one God is not good enough. You must believe that Muhammad is his prophet. In order to become a Muslim, you must take the Shahada, which says there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. Because it wouldn't be shirk associating Muhammad
So
with
Iqbal
Allah.
came up and he's backstage now. So we'll quickly wrap this up with Ahmed. Instead of going, drawing it out, I'll just say, are there perhaps 5 pillars, I think it is, of Islam that
There are.
you have to follow? Yeah. And aren't there like 6 articles of faith? And and the Quran is a 400-page book that just says God is one over and over again. And there's multiple hadith collections spanning thousands and thousands of hadith sayings of Muhammad, and every single one of those hadith, all Muhammad ever said is God is one, right? Because it's the only message of Islam. Yes,
that's all I ever said, man.
Yeah,
but let me add this in here really quick. So James 2:19, you believe that there is one God, good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. So it's not just believing one God. That's not what it's about. It's about believing in the correct God. Dude, we got like 6 people backstage now. What is this?
Well, 2, but
oh, okay. I see unknown user, Shahid, and Ruth.
So Iqbal, you're on now, or Shahid, whatever you prefer to be called.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're on. You're up live with us now.
Yeah, it's finished already. Can you hear me? Yeah,
we can hear you.
Just finish, okay. Thaddeus, how are you?
I'm good. I'm not actually sure what you're asking me, though. Are you saying that you just finished work, or are you saying we should finish the broadcast before talking to you? I'm not actually clear what you're trying to say.
I will take a little bit, not too much, but I want to clear something.
Well, now's your chance. So, did you want to talk to my audience, or did you want to just talk to me off air?
Yeah, I'm talking to your audience, no problem.
Okay. I'm fine either way. I'm just trying to clarify because I wasn't sure what you wanted. All right, so you're live now. What did you want to say?
Okay. You are making fun of me because I misspelled your name.
No, I wasn't.
I already told you English is not my language. Maybe I misspelled your name or something else.
I wasn't making fun of you.
Okay.
I was just having a little fun. I said it's perfectly okay to misspell my name. So.
Okay, let's come to the topic. You said you do not find Muhammad in the Bible, okay?
Correct.
Okay, did God promise Abraham that he will make the descendant of Ishmael a great nation?
Yes.
Okay, in Genesis 21, did this promise, he fulfill this promise?
Yes, it's fulfilled within Ishmael's own lifetime.
Ishmael lifetime.
Yep.
Okay, can you open Galatians chapter 4, verse number 21?
I sure can. Give me 1 second to pull it up.
As he's pulling that up, Shahid, do you remember what Genesis 16:12 says?
Let's finish this one first, then
I figured, well, you're going from Genesis to the New Testament, so I figured I'd at least stay in Genesis. But go ahead.
No, this is the same verse. This is talking about the same verse.
You got Galatians 4:21 up. Tell me, you who desire to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, one by a slave woman and one by a free woman. But the son of the slave was born according to the flesh, while the son of the free woman was born through the promise. Now this may be interpreted allegorically. These 2 women are covenants. One is from Mount Sinai, bearing children for slavery. She is Hagar. Now, Hagar is Mount Sinai for Arabia. She
Yeah,
corresponds
yeah.
to the present Jerusalem, for she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem
Okay.
above is free, and she is our mother. So, what do you think this has anything to do with a great nation exactly?
So Ishmael was living in Arabia. Okay.
Well, not according to the text, but
Yeah, he was the son of Agar, and Agar was in Arabia according to this verse.
okay. So, in the
So
broader context, yes. The
oh,
whole general area can be called Arabia. The word here is not an English word, obviously. It's in Greek, and they've chosen to translate it as Arabia.
yeah, he is in Arabia. This is clear from the verse.
I just told you the whole entire region was referred to as Arabia. You're going to want to say that it's referring to
So,
Mecca
oh,
specifically,
not
and it's
not
not.
not. I'm saying that
It's
he is referred to, but I'm talking about the descendant of Ishmael. So can you show me from the history that the descendant of Ibrahim, the sons of Ishmael, they were a great nation? Can you show me anywhere in the history or in the book of in your Bible? Can you show us any evidence?
yeah, if you read the Genesis narrative, where the promise comes from, it talks about the many descendants of Ishmael. That is the fulfillment of the promise.
No, no, I am asking, show me where did he made the great
Oh,
nation of Ishmael. We don't have any evidence from the history that the Ishmael
I just
have a great
told
nation
you that.
except the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Okay, first of all, you have no evidence that your prophet is related to Ishmael. Second of all, I just told you the evidence from the Bible. It describes his many descendants. It describes the people groups which he founded. They
Where,
would. Can you let me
where,
finish? Can you let me finish? Can you let me finish?
okay, okay.
The people groups that are descended from Ishmael are going to be the great nations that the nation of Israel is in conflict throughout the biblical narrative. There is no need to go 3,000 years in the future and say it's fulfilled in Muhammad when it's fulfilled within the biblical narrative. And I don't know why you went to Galatians. This doesn't have anything to do with anything. Uh,
I,
it,
I go to I go to
it,
Galatians because he was promised that he will make the great nation, but we do not find anywhere in the history
Okay.
that the descent that the
you're just
children of
repeating
Ishmael
yourself.
become a great nation.
You're
You
just
do not show me.
repeating yourself.
Well,
I am asking you, show me from the history that the descendant of Ishmael, they have become a great nation. Where can you show us in the history?
well,
I
according to
already told
your,
you.
actually, sorry, go ahead,
Because
Omar.
all the prophets in the Bible, they have been explained in details, but there is no details of the descendant of Ishmael.
What do you
And
mean
there
there's no
is
details of the descendants of Ishmael?
and there is no historical evidence that the nation of Ishmael, they have a great nation. Where is there?
I already told you that it's throughout the biblical narrative that the people groups that are descended from Ishmael are the nations that are in conflict with Israel. They are great nations. They are the enemies of Israel. And then you say because you want to go to Galatians because it has the word Arabia. That's all. The only reason you wanted to go there. It says, let me give an allegorical interpretation. Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. So according to you, because he says that Hagar is Mount Sinai, and he happens to use the word Arabia, that somehow that has something to do with Muhammad. That's your argument.
My argument is that in Arabia there is only one prophet, a great nation, which is the Muslims. That's why I'm
Why
referring
are
to
you talking about a prophet? Why are you talking about a prophet? There's no promise of a prophet. There was a promise that I will make you into a great nation. That promise was fulfilled
no,
in Isaiah,
let-
and it was fulfilled in
was
Isaac and Ishmael's lifetime.
was Ibrahim a prophet?
What does that have to do with anything?
because his descendant must be
Promise is a
prophet.
great. No, I'm not going on your wild goose chase. The promise is to make a great nation.
A great nation.
Nothing
For
about
what?
you will be
For
a
what?
prophet. Nothing about your descendant 4,000 years, 3,000 years later will be a prophet. Nothing about Muhammad. This is all your imagination. All the text says is I'll make you into a great nation. That means you will have many descendants, and they will be politically important in that area. In
There,
the
he
immediate
is.
future.
This is talking. This is only talking about the two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Isaac, he had already made a covenant with him, but he didn't fulfill the promise with Abraham of Ishmael. How I already told
What do you
you.
mean
Show
he
me
didn't
from.
fulfill it? You just keep telling me.
You are you are referring only to the biblical text.
Yeah, I'm referring to the biblical narrative. That's where you got the dang promise from in the first place. If you can go to the biblical narrative for the promise, I certainly can go to the biblical narrative for the fulfillment of the promise.
No.
Don't tell me that I have to. Plus, you have zero evidence that your prophet is related to Ishmael. The Quran seems to think he's related to Isaac.
You are denying your own Bible.
I'm denying your idiotic interpretation.
You are making your own interpretation to the text. This is why you are not accepting it. You are.
All right, he's muted. Go ahead.
How do you spell gaslit? Trying to gaslight you very badly in Arabic. I'm not really sure how to do that. So he decided he's made quite a few mistakes here, and you've answered him wonderfully, Thaddeus, and correctly, and he has yet to actually interact with what it is that you're saying. But go ahead and stay. Don't change. Stay in that one spot. Stay in Galatians. Yeah. So he decided he wanted to go to Galatians. No, that's fine. And we can go back to Genesis, but I want to, since he decided to take us to Galatians, let's go ahead and go to Galatians, right? Mm-hmm. So the son of the slave was born according to the flesh. Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, right, if he wants to make this argument that Ishmael or that Muhammad is the descendant of Ishmael, then that means that the entire nation of Arabia, right? And I don't believe that this is exactly what it's saying, but if he's going to go with this literal interpretation of it, this means that they should be slaves. They should be slaves. And let's say, well, we name our kids slave of Allah, and so, okay, great. For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by the slave woman and one by the free woman. But the son of the slave was born according to the flesh. When we go back into Genesis, right, I'm going to go through the story, and hopefully, Shahid, you're actually listening here, buddy, and you are muted, so just please listen, and we'll unmute you whenever we're finished making our point. We'll let you make your point, of course. But whenever we go into the accounts, Abraham was promised to have many sons, numbering the stars of heaven, the sands of the seashore, and he was promised to have this son through whom, Thaddeus?
He was promised to have this son through his wife, and then
who?
Sarah. And
okay.
then he said that, well, she's old. I need to have a son a different way.
Yeah.
So he went. He didn't really believe God's promise, and he and Sarah. Now, to be clear, it's consensual here, right? He's not going behind Sarah's back.
Yep.
He and Sarah said, why don't you impregnate this younger woman, Hagar, who is my slave, who's Sarah's slave. Therefore, it's a legitimate relationship because, you can legitimately claim the child as your own heir is what I'm trying to say, because of the legal relationship between Sarah and Hagar.
Right. And Hagar is a slave or a servant, right? And where did Abraham and Sarah pick her up from? Where is she from? Where is her homeland?
Egypt.
All right. So she's Egyptian, correct? So she's an Egyptian slave woman. All right. So they Abraham and Sarah disobey God. And they decide that what they are going to do is the way that it should be done. They disobey God. And Hagar is caught in the middle of this, and she has a son named Ishmael. Is Ishmael the promised son?
So in Sarah and Abraham's opinion at the time, they're thinking this is how the promise will be fulfilled.
Okay.
But then God comes and he explicitly says, this is not what I promised. Because of my relationship with you, Abraham, I will bless Ishmael, but he is not the promise. He is not the person from whose line the promise will be fulfilled.
Exactly. Bingo. Right. And so it is not through his line, right? So mankind, first of all, the reasoning behind this is that mankind can mess up, right? They can disobey God, and God can still bless whatever it is that they messed up. That's one of the messages. But the other message is that was not the intention of God. What God's intention was for Sarah, the free woman, to have a son by Abraham, so that the promise of the promised land, of the message that would bless all nations are blessed through which nation? Thaddeus, which nation are all nations going to be blessed through?
Through the nation that comes from Isaac.
Right, which is we know Israel now, which is Israel, right? So I'll let you kind of go ahead here. I've got some other things to say, but I don't want to get too far away before we let Shahid give us.
Let's go ahead and let him respond. Shahid, you're back up live. Please don't yell.
Why do you muted me? Yes, I have
because
no
you
time.
Kept yelling
and you have putting your own interpretation to the Bibles. I am asking you, did he promise that the descendant of Ishmael will be a great nation? You did not give any historical evidence for that. Show me historical evidence that promise was fulfilled. You are going under interpretation of your own interpretation.
Okay, I got it. So
show me historical.
Stop repeating yourself, please. You don't need to say everything 4 times.
Okay? You are not answering my question.
How am I supposed to answer? You never shut up.
You're yapping.
Yeah.
Okay. So ask your question, then stop talking. Then I can answer. Don't ask your question and then immediately say, you're not answering me when you don't give me a chance. So please define what you mean by historical evidence.
Yeah, go give me from evidence from history that the promise of God with Abraham was fulfilled. Show me.
I'm asking. So you said, show me historical evidence. I'm asking what you consider historical evidence. It's a simple question. What would you consider valid proof?
Outside from the Bible. Show me from the history.
So why do I have to show you something from outside the Bible?
But you don't have, because I am asking you a specific question. Show me from the history that the promise was fulfilled.
Show me from history outside the Bible that Abraham existed. We both agree Abraham was a very important prophet. Show me outside the Bible. Show me outside the Bible that Abraham existed.
I am making my arguments from the Bible, and then when he was promised according to the scripture, but you do not show me any evidence from the Bible. I am asking you also from the Bible that the children of Ishmael was a great nation. You do not have any evidence from the Bible. You do not have any evidence from the history, and you are going and putting your own interpretation to the text. I am specifically asking a simple question from your Bible. Show me that this promise was fulfilled, and show me also from the history. If you cannot find from in the Bible, show me in the history.
Okay, you don't need to repeat yourself over and over again. Again, just make your point and stop. You don't need to say it 3 times. So make up your mind. When I told you what the Bible says, you said go to something outside the Bible. So is the Bible acceptable evidence or not?
If you are not able to give me reference from the Bible, then I ask you, show me from the history. You do not have any evidence for that.
I didn't say I couldn't make you a reference from the Bible.
Show me.
Yes, I will. So so Ishmael's descendants are described in Genesis. I got to check what chapter, but we'll go there. I don't have all the references memorized.
You can go only to Isaiah.
No, I'm not going to go just to the verses that you tell me to go to. We can look at all of the evidence. So here is Genesis 17:20. As for Ishmael, I heard you. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. The passage is telling you exactly what God is going to do. It tells you exactly what great nation means. That Ishmael will be blessed with many children. Specifically, he'll father 12 princes. That's what it means. Why are you interpreting great nation as a prophet? That he'll have a prophet many, many
Okay, what?
years in the future that's his
Okay,
descendant. What does that have to do with being a great nation? What does the word
okay.
great mean? What does the word
According
great
to
mean?
me, it's spiritually and also by numbers.
So you say that the word great here means
Great
spiritually
means spiritually, he will make
and
him
by
spiritually
numbers.
great, and also will in numbers.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. The Hebrew word is gadol. I'm going to pull up the lexicon, which will tell us what the word means. Okay. So,
Okay, let me, if you don't mind me jumping in here real quick,
Yep.
Shahid, you need to be consistent with your arguments, right? So you're demanding of us that we prove things either biblically or extra biblically with sources. Thaddeus just asked you a question, and you answered literally by saying, "In my opinion."
that's
So
true.
I just want to
Thaddeus,
I just want to point that out, that that's
excuse
your
me, excuse
opinion, and
me.
that's fine. But I just want to point out that if you're going to demand certain things from us, a certain standard, then I would appreciate it if you're willing to hold yourself to the same standard. I just want to say that. I just want to point that out. I will pause and mute myself up here again while Thaddeus
All right.
goes ahead and
So
explains
here are all the definitions of great, what it can be applied to in Hebrew, right? So great in size. We see how that one would make sense. Great in height, as in a mountain, that obviously doesn't make sense. In extent, in number makes sense within the passage. In weight, obviously doesn't make sense. In significance, in volume, in influence, in collocations, in fixed expressions, varia, which is a specialized Hebrew term. And then it can also mean God is great. So the term can be used to describe God's attributes. It can be described in a specialized Hebrew phrase, or it can be used in the way English word used great is for, size, height, number. The passage itself tells us how to understand it. It tells us that it should be understood as number, that he will raise a great nation, as in a nation of a large number of people, that Ishmael will have many descendants, and that they will found a new nation. That is what the context makes sense. You'll notice that I did not read anything that says anything about spirituality, let alone prophethood. So I have supplied a source for why I believe the passage is describing the large nations that will come from Ishmael. And if we read on in Genesis, it will eventually say the specific names of the 12 people, the 12 princes. And then we will see that the nations that they founded, i.e. that are named after them, occur again and again in the biblical narrative. Now it's your turn to give me a reason to believe that this passage is a promise of a future prophet.
Okay, if I broke in the middle because my battery, cell phone battery is getting down, so I ask you, and you go to the meaning and here and there. I'm simply ask a simple question, that this promise that he will make the nation of Ishmael a great nation. This is in numbers, not in anything else. You are going around in here. Okay, I am asking, this is about numbers. He will make a great nation in numbers. Can you show me the evidence from the Bible or outside from the Bible that they have made a great nation, the descendant of Ishmael? Can you show me any evidence?
Sure, we can go through the entire biblical narrative and see how many times the people groups that will be descended from Ishmael occur in the biblical
Okay,
narrative if you really want to.
can you name the descendant of Ishmael first?
Yeah, I got to look up where it
Yeah.
names them.
Genesis 25. Genesis 25.
Okay, thank you. So you already know that the Bible names them. Well,
I know.
what are you disputing with me then?
Yeah, I'm disputing, but there is nothing mentioned the descendant of Ishmael that they have a great nation except one. This is called Kedar. Okay, he was
Okay,
the
so
second son of he was the second son of Ishmael, and the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ is directly go to Kedar.
you just told me that Kedar's a great nation. You just said that Kedar's a great nation, therefore it was fulfilled in Kedar.
I am not telling you that Kedar was a great nation. There is no evidence that Kedar was,
You want me to,
but the
you want me to
descendant of
rewind? You
Kedar.
literally just said that.
Why you are breaking the things? But I ask you just to give me the example. Give me evidence from that. But I'm waiting.
So we have the 12 sons of Ishmael here, already showing that God has fulfilled the first aspect of the promise, that he will have 12 sons, and he will have. Now, just before we go look anywhere else, just think about this, okay? God said that you're going to have many descendants. You'll start with 12 sons, and then they'll have many children. If someone has 12 sons, just without any other evidence, is it very likely that they'll have a lot of grandchildren, or that they'll only have 1 or 2 grandchildren?
He has 12 sons. I'm from these 12 sons. Give me any evidence that there is a great nation among these 12 sons.
Thaddeus, you mind if I step in here real quick, buddy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So if you go to Genesis 17:20, what you're going to see is, as for Ishmael, this is Yahweh speaking, I've heard you, and I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and multiply him, and he will become the father of 12 rulers. I will make him into a great nation. So the explicit reference here in terms of what great means is multiply him greatly and fruitful, meaning that he will have many descendants. It's exactly what Thaddeus said, and this answers your question.
Yeah, this is mean in numbers, and I'm asking him, show me that the descendant of Ishmael, they have a great nation in numbers. He do not provide any evidence to me in the Bible, from the Bible,
I just read it.
and from the history.
I just read it to you.
It's fine. It's fine. We'll go slow. So you said that I could go to the Bible or history. So I'm just going to go to Kedar, since that's the one that you already told me was a great nation. And I'm going to go to history. I could go to look at the examples in the Bible and how there repeatedly are, and that Ishmael's various sons and their descendants are often enemies of Israel. But since you've acknowledged Kedar, we're just going to go with that. And sorry, I did not share in the right window, so let me share correctly this time. So we have the Wikipedia article on the Kedarites, a group known from history. The Kedarite kingdom, or Kedar, was largely nomadic, ancient Arab tribal confederation described as the most organized of the northern Arabian tribes. At the peak of its power in the 6th century BCE, it had a kingdom that controlled a vast region of Arabia. Sounds like a great nation to me. What do you think, Astro?
I think so as well. And to also indicate the northern part, like you just mentioned here, if you go to Genesis 25:18, it says Ishmael's descendants settled from Halva to Shur, which is near the border of Egypt as you go towards Asher. And they lived in hostility toward all of their brothers. All right. So again, Ishmael's descendants settled near the border of Egypt. Okay, so near the border of Egypt. I wonder why that would be. Where's Hagar from again?
Yeah, we have a map here in Wikipedia article showing where the region of their kingdom was.
Tedious,
Oh,
I ask a specific. Tedious, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I ask you a specific question. You do not show me any evidence that the nation of Ishmael, they have a great nation, and he will make him a fruitful nation. What does it mean by fruitful? Fruitful
I,
means that you do not show me any evidence. You are going
I
here
just,
and there. Yeah, why you are not stuck to the point? I am asking, give me any evidence from the history. You do not provide it. Give me evidence from the Bible. You do not provide it. It means you are failed to provide any evidence from the Bible and also from the Bible. You are going here and there and just making your own arguments.
so you're very good at making assertions that I'm not answering your question. You're not very good at listening, however.
I
You
listen to you. You read me articles from the Wikipedia, and you do not show me evidence that the nation was a great nation. What was their fruits? What was their teaching? What they teach? They do not show me anything.
Okay, nobody said
you
anything about teaching. We said it was in numbers. We showed you from the Bible where it
I
explicitly
it
says
is
you will
mentioned
have
that a
many
fruit.
please
I
stop
will make them.
offspring.
interrupting.
I will.
Please stop interrupting. Go ahead, Astrid.
No, I mean, I was just trying to say, and hopefully he's able to listen, right? We've already established for him that Ishmael, the word great, right, never said anything about spiritual, and he even admitted that it was in his opinion that that's what great meant. When we go to the context and the meanings, the possible meanings of the word used in Hebrew, none of it has anything to do with what he said. What it has to do with, and specifically the verses that we have quoted to him, is it has to do with the numbers of his descendants. Fruitful people, right? Ishmael will be fruitful. He will have many. Yahweh says, God says that he will greatly multiply his offspring. That's how we do proper hermeneutics. That is how we read for context. The context of the passage of what great means, it means great in number. We can actually even contrast that with the promise made to Isaac, and the same thing is the same type of language is being used. He will be fruitful, he will multiply, his descendants will be like the numbers of the stars. The word great in this context means great in number. So I'm not sure why he keeps asking about a nation and things like that. There are plenty of northern Arabian / east of Egypt nations that we can list throughout the history of time that would be considered a great nation. At the same time, as you mentioned earlier, Thaddeus, it's impossible for him to even track himself or Muhammad back to the descendants of Ishmael. And even in the region that is shown there on the picture, the region of who would be considered the Ishmaelites does not reach far south enough to even get to Mecca in general. So the assertions that he is making are great stories, but they don't have any actual historical backing. They don't relate to any of the writings in the Bible. And everything that we have done to this point has demonstrated using proof, right? We're looking at maps, we're pulling up Bible verses, and his best argument right now is to just continue to say the same thing. You have not showed me this, you have not showed me that. When in fact, it's clear to us, it's clear to you, it's clear to the audience. We have literally showed him everything that he has asked for. Now, I'm done with my little bit. And
Yep. So I just want to reiterate that you told me to go to any source inside or outside the Bible. I first went to the Bible, showed that he had 12 sons, and I was trying to talk you through logically. But then you started yelling at me that Kedar was a great nation. Kedar was the only of the 12 that had a great nation. Then you said that you had misspoken. You didn't actually mean that. Fine, you didn't mean that. But history tells us, in fact, that the Kedarites were a historical people that were substantial in size. Now, historians don't necessarily believe the biblical narrative, but if you're going to say Kedar's a real, like might say that Kedar's not a real person, right? Historians might say that, but the Kedarites existed. The Kedarites were a great nation. So if we're taking the biblical narrative seriously, and you have to say Kedar is a historical person, because as you just pointed out, this is who Muhammad supposedly is descendant from, then the nation that bears his name was indeed a great nation. You're back on. Iqbal, you can, or Shahid, you can speak now if you like.
So what I can speak, you do not provide anything. You are making your own interpretations of why I mentioned this prophecy, because it is mentioned in the Quran in chapter 22, verse number 78, and God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tell the Prophet ﷺ that this religion of yours is the religion of your father Abraham. And the Abraham is the lineage from Ishmael. The last Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is from Ishmael. Can you pull out the ones, chapter 22, verse 78?
Yep, I can
This is
bring that up.
this is the great nation, the Kedarites. You are talking about Kedarites for a great nation. This is what I mentioned, that Kedar was the
Who said Kedar?
descendant. Yeah, Kedar.
Yeah, but I don't remember anybody saying Kedar, but go ahead.
There is nothing mentioned in Kedar, but he is promised that this Islam is the religion of his forefather Abraham. And this is the great nation which was promised to Ibrahim.
So, at least the first source I have here, they're either using a different numbering system or you have the wrong reference.
You said 2278?
Isn't about Ishmael or.
It's a very long verse. Read all yours.
Strike. Okay, I'll read it. Strive in the cause of Allah in a manner worthy of striving. He has chosen you, and he has not laid upon you any hardship in religion. Keep to the faith of your father Abraham. So is that what you're referring to, that portion there?
Yeah. He is telling you this is the religion. Islam is the religion of your father, and the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ directly go to the Ibrahim.
Okay.
And this is you mentioned yourself, the Kedarites, and from the Arab, the Kedarites from Arab, and there is only one person which come in the Arab and was make a great nation also, and he was a fruitful nation and also was a great nation in numbers. There is no any other one in history and biblical.
Again, you're very good at repeating your assertions over and over again. Can you show me any historical or Quranic evidence that 2278 is talking about Ishmael?
This is you're talking about the to the Prophet Muhammad that Ibrahim was your father. This is direct reference. This is direct reference to this is direct reference to Ibrahim alayhi salatu salam.
Can you calm down? Calm down. Take it slow. I didn't say that this isn't related to Muhammad. Pay attention to the question I'm actually asking you.
Yeah, this is
that the son of Abraham that's being referenced is Ishmael. Or are you just adding your own interpretation to the Quran?
Does Abraham have sons?
He has
Ishmael.
More than one.
Yeah,
son.
and Ishmael have sons.
He asked you a question, and you're not.
Yeah, so you want that I should show you a specific person that the Prophet ﷺ is from that person? No, I can't show you this.
Okay, this is just your interpretation.
But
thank you for admitting
this
that.
Is not my. This is the direct words directed to the Prophet ﷺ. God is directed.
You're correct that the Quran claims that Muhammad is descended from Abraham. It does not claim that he's descended from Ishmael. So your argument doesn't even get off the ground because you're assuming that the Quran believes that Muhammad is descended from Ishmael, and the Quran doesn't actually say that. It could be referring to Isaac.
So we from history we know from the biblical narrative that Ibrahim has a son Ishmael, and Ishmael was promised in the book of Genesis that his descendant will be a great nation, and the Prophet ﷺ is from the descendant of Ishmael. So what evidence? What evidence more you need?
You don't. First of all, you don't get to make that assertion. You have to provide evidence that Muhammad is descended from Ishmael. Second of all, we've explained to you from the context, great nation means having many descendants. We've shown you from history that indeed Ishmael had many descendants and that a great nation in influence as well was already raised up. You're just assuming that great nation means there'll be a future prophet, and there's no justification for that whatsoever. So until you show me where the phrase a great nation means a future prophet in your descendants many years down the line, you don't even have the beginnings of an argument. You're just asserting that you know what great nation means, even though that's not even an interpretation that Hebrew offers for the word great.
So what is your understanding of the verse of Genesis which he promised to God promised with Abraham? What do you mean by this?
What do you mean? What is my interpretation? We've
already
gone over it multiple times.
You are putting your own interpretation to the text. That's why I'm asking you.
No, I am not. I am not.
This is no.
I am exegeting.
No. You are just playing.
Okay.
Projecting what you're doing is not the same as what we're actually doing.
Let me explain to you the difference, right? We're looking at the context. We're looking at how the phrase is used in context. What a great nation means in context. Where this.
Excuse me.
No problem. So we are explaining we are giving our meaning out of the text. We are looking at it where it says, I will multiply you greatly. I will give you many descendants. I will raise a great nation. And we're saying all these terms mean the same thing, because that's how normal interpretation means. You look at the context, you determine what meaning. Sorry, he's muted now. I'll unmute him when it's his turn to talk, but too much background noise. So we're looking at the text. We're looking at the context. We're saying that the word should make sense in context. What you're saying is whatever I believe the text means, that's what it means. And then you're accusing me of saying that. No, I'm the one that's looking at the context and providing you evidence that my interpretation, if you want to call it my interpretation, even though it's clearly the plain meaning of the text, was fulfilled. You have not provided any evidence that the word great can mean spiritual. You have not provided any evidence that Muhammad is descended from Ishmael. You have not provided any evidence that the phrase great nation means a future prophet. So one of us is indeed reading their imaginary interpretation into the text, but I'm sorry, sir, it's not me. You may speak.
Okay, no problem. If you are not satisfied, it's upon you. But I already give you.
You didn't give me anything. You gave me literally nothing.
Listen. Excuse me. It's time for work. Okay. I will contact later on. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Well, that was
what
very I expected.
Well, I'm sure he legitimately has to work. I'm not.
No, not the work part. I'm saying just how the conversation.
Yeah. That was very interesting. You know, I read the text, I interpret the text based on the context, and I am just making stuff up. Like I said, he's very good at asserting over and over again his position. He did not provide me any evidence. He didn't answer any of my questions. And then he says, before he had to go, I think he was about to say, you know, I provided you ample evidence. If it's not good enough for you, that's your problem.
Yeah.
He didn't provide me anything. He provided me a single Quran verse that doesn't even mention Ishmael or talk about any great nation or anything else.
Yeah. And that's exactly how our conversation went for like 3 hours the other day. And I think he's parroting what I told him at the end. I said, look, it's not my job to make you be convinced of the truth. It's my job to provide for you evidence like you and I just did. It's my job to provide evidence for you and to make a coherent argument, but it's not my job to force you to understand something or not. I can tell you the same thing 10 ways, you know, give you 10 different references, give you multiple. And that's exactly what we did, Thaddeus.
Yeah. I mean, I could have gone to the Bible. I could have gone to history. I mean, he's like, you're jumping all over the place. Well, some of them was kind of jumping
as he went. No, but we really So as he goes, read Genesis, now go to Galatians. That's a jump, right? That's a really big jump. Whereas,
and I still actually have no clue why he wanted to go to Galatians. I think just because it mentioned the word Arabian, he didn't care what any of the other words were.
Yes.
But it didn't help his case in the slightest.
No.
I mean, Paul says, I'll give you a spiritual interpretation. And then he says, Hagar is Mount Sinai. Well, actually, this is good. We should actually go for what Paul is really saying, right?
Yeah.
So what is Paul really saying? What is Mount Sinai in the biblical narrative?
So Mount Sinai is where you're bound by the law, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the point that Paul is making in a lot of his letters, but in this specific passage is he is using these two past biblical characters to draw a contrast, right? One is children of the promise of the free woman who will become children of God, who will be free from the burdens of sin and death and all of those types of things. And on the other hand, there are those who are born of the flesh in sin and into bondage and slavery, right? Given the two contrasts, you want to be the free son and child of God, as opposed to the bound servant and slave of the flesh. That's really the contrast that's being drawn here. Now he uses Hagar as a means to display this, and Sarah as a means to display this. And so he's actually, I was trying to draw that out there, and I was trying to give him enough time to talk, but I got distracted. I fell for the red herrings. It actually hurts him. This is a painful situation. Basically, what this is saying, if we're to understand, if we're going to grant that Muhammad is a descendant of Ishmael and Hagar, right, and the Muslims are literally just slaves to the flesh and not free, is essentially what this is saying. If I may make one quick argument, and I promise this will actually be quick, and I wanted to ask him this. I wanted to ask him, and this will be very brief. I wanted to ask him if he thought that through Muhammad and through the Muslims and through Islam, if the whole world was blessed through them. And naturally, I would imagine that the answer would be yes. However, that is never promised to the descendants of Ishmael. Again, assuming that Muhammad is even a descendant of Ishmael, which is an unfalsifiable claim. There is no direct link or lineage to him and Ishmael. But it says in Genesis 22:18, and this is Yahweh speaking to Abraham. He says, through your offspring, all nations on earth. And this is speaking about Isaac, my bad, that through their offsprings, all the nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed my voice, right? So the child of promise is Isaac. The child of promise, the nation of promise, through whom the entire world will be blessed, is not through Ishmael. He did not get that blessing. It was Isaac who got that blessing. And of course, Isaac gives birth to Jacob, which is Israel. That is the blessing, right? The numbers are both the same. The Jewish nation's got a lot of numbers. The Ishmaelite nation has a lot of numbers, okay? But the difference is the blessing of the covenant, of the promise of being a light to all nations. And that only happens through one tribe of Judah, and that has only happened through one person, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Amen. Yeah, we did miss an opportunity there. And as Bowrudder pointed out, that Galatians 4 is a huge mistake for the reasons you just described there. Because according to Galatians 4, Hagar is spiritual slavery, and he was trying to use this as evidence that Muhammad comes in the line of Hagar. So even if we grant his assumption, which is, to be very clear, just an assumption with zero evidence whatsoever, he even said as much. He said that, in my opinion, this is what it means. Even if we grant that assumption, the Mohammedans now, the descendants of Muhammad, and again, this is actually about genetic descendants, but
Right.
Are the slaves.
Mm-hmm.
The people under the promise given to Abraham are free. They got the wrong promise, according to Iqbal's own argument.
Yep.
All right, that was fun.
That was something. That was definitely something.
But if he comes back, and I think he will, because he's shown some interest in me lately. But if he comes back, the question is going to be the same. Where is your evidence? Because he was very good at asserting I wasn't giving him evidence, even though I was providing sources, looking at the Bible, analyzing it, looking up what the word meant. He didn't provide any sources, any evidence for any of his assertions, except to say Quran 2276, which doesn't mention Ishmael.
And that was
He
a really
doesn't
good
talk-
catch, Thaddeus. That was a great catch. I don't think I would have caught that. I will from now on. But you're right. He was asserting all night that Muhammad is the descendant of Ishmael, right? Through Abraham. I see the link that he's trying to draw there. But if you're going to go to that passage, it doesn't say, right? So that leaves it open. He could be a descendant of Ishmael. He could also be a descendant of Isaac. There's a lot of different ways he could be a descendant. So
yeah,
that
and
was a really
if
good
you
catch.
look at the development of Islamic theology, it actually took them quite a long time to figure out that they needed to say Ishmael. Strangely enough,
Oh,
even
really?
though this is, yeah. So I knew the Quran didn't say it. So I knew whatever he went to, it wasn't going to say Ishmael, because the Quran does not say anything about the promise coming through Ishmael. That developed much later in Islamic history. I think if you look at some of the tafsir, the early tafsir, they'll even actually on this verse say it's about Isaac, because they assumed the biblical narrative was teaching the same thing.
Yeah.
And they knew it
Like the
came through
entire
Isaac.
Quran assumes as well.
Yes, exactly. That they'll even though the verse doesn't know well enough to say the son's name, the early Muslim commentators who knew better than Allah thought it was referring to Isaac, and it was much later that they came up with the idea it was through Ishmael. And then I don't know why they want to force it to be Ishmael. It could be Isaac, and it would be the same argument. So I'm not sure why they want to force it to be Ishmael. But once they decide it was Ishmael, then they just go to the Bible and they look for any instance of Ishmael's name or any of his descendants, and then they assume that somehow has something to do with Islam.
Right.
Pure assumption through and through.
Well,
in his own words, he said Kedar. He said the only one of these 12 that had a great nation was Kedar, and which isn't actually true. Some of the others also became enemies of Israel. But I said, all right, you just proved it. The prophecy's been fulfilled, or the promise has been fulfilled. There is a great nation. And he's like, no, it means a future prophet.
Yeah,
it's spiritual because I say so. All right, that was an adventure. I hope that people found that useful. I hope you see what I was trying to do, talk him through it slowly. He, like I said, very good at repeating himself over and over again, not so good at actually giving an argument or following an argument. Roof is still here, so Roof, I have added you to the scene. Did you still want to ask us a question?
If she's
muted on her end,
she may have fallen asleep.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you are. Hey, Ruth.
Hi, I am here. No, well, I am from Colombia, so I really don't speak English very well, but I want to say something. Well, the reason I am here is because we, Spanish speakers, don't have what you had. I mean, there are many English channels where we learn about Islam, but I was looking for, I don't know, I think I found 3 or 2 Spanish in channels in Spanish. So the first time I listened something like Muhammad is in the Bible, my first thought was, are they crazy? how is that possible?
Mm.
What? I am a new Christian. I believe 2 years ago or 3, something like that. But my family had some Bibles in house. We read them. And I was listening. I don't remember his name. He was from USA. He was explaining all those verses where Muhammad is in the Bible. It was, I don't know, I say my brother in Spanish, I must, what I do, I cry and I laugh. It's funny because the way they explain how is he in the Bible is, I don't know, I don't know what to say that in English, but it's crazy. Just twisty every word they put, they what they want is throw in the garbage. I don't know, it's so crazy. I was thinking maybe the only Muslim that speak English are crazy, but I was put some commentaries in Spanish website. They are the same. They are crazy. They say you definitely don't use your brain. Are you blind? You can. It's the same. They can start insulting you, may joke about what we believe, but they don't show any evidence about what they are saying. And as I say, Spanish speaker are many people in this world, but there are, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5 channels in English, in Spanish. So I started to listen to you guys because we need information about Islam. And I was, my country is, I'm from Colombia. I was looking, there are, I don't know, 15, 20 mosques in my country. My country is a Catholic country. I suppose it's a Catholic country. Oh my God. Even here, a city is close near to my city, had a mosque. Almost every big city in my country had a mosque. And I was in my university, I studied theology, and as my teacher, they don't know so much about Islam. They don't know about that. Next semester, I believe I had a class about Islam in Hindu or other religions. And I had to learn about Islam because they don't know. So thank guys, because we don't have that you have. Almost every channel is in English. And my English is very bad, so I try to learn, take notes in Spanish in order to make my own videos in Spanish or Italian. By Portuguese. I understand some Portuguese too. That's I want to say. I pray for you every day because I'm doing a very, very great job. I pray because, I don't know, Spanish speakers learn about Islam. There are many Muslims in Spain, Latin America too. Brazil had many Muslims. And Christian, I don't know. In those countries. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. Go ahead, Est.
Yeah, and we'll definitely keep you in our prayers as well, and praying for you and your family and the country, and hopefully there can be a good Spanish-speaking voice that can explain a lot of what Islam is propagating and what they're teaching, because my own personal experience, I didn't know a lot about it. And I think that works to the advantage of a lot of Muslims, is because they can blindside people because they are so unknown. And if an entire region is unknown to it, they're going to come prepared with their Dawa script and their, we're going to destroy your faith and invite you to ours type of thing. So I think it would be amazing, and we'll continue to pray for more Spanish speaking apologists to be able to educate and to equip the faithful with proper, truthful information about what Islam teaches and how to counteract some of the lies that they try to propagate. But thank you, Ruth, for saying what you said. It's very encouraging, actually.
Yes. So first of all, thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for your support. I know that you catch a good majority, maybe all my live streams, and always good to see you in the chat. Ruth did not mention, but I will mention that she has translated a number of videos of mine and a number of videos of David Woods and possibly other people as well into Spanish, and I believe some into Italian as well. I put a link to her channel in the chat. If by chance you speak Spanish, definitely go check that out.
Or just subscribe to it anyway to help get more viewership up. Get that algorithm out there.
Definitely. And Professor Yaffel said your English is not very bad, sister. And I agree. Your English is fine.
Good. All right. She has 184 subscribers. My goal is to get her over. How many people are in here right now, Thaddeus?
Let me check. Sorry, because I opened her channel.
I opened her channel too. Yeah, that's why I was
the stream up.
38, something like that, maybe. So we should be able to get 20 new subscribers. So we should be able to get Ruth over that 200 mark. And I just got a text from my wife. 45 people, perhaps. I don't know. I guess it depends on when you look and how long it's been since you refresh your page. But let's go, people. Give her some likes.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I can add something. I pray for Spanish speakers or Italian or Portuguese, because for us as Spanish speakers, it's easy to understand Italian and Portuguese. I mean, I can listen to a Portuguese, a person who speaks Portuguese, and can understand. So for me, it's easier. And it's the same when I listen to an Italian. And that's the reason for me, or for one person who speaks Roman language, sorry, my bad pronunciation, it's easier. As Tadeu, sorry for your name, I don't know how to say it in Spanish. I try to help him to add Spanish and Italian or Portuguese classes on his channel, but it's very hard. I had too many work to do. I almost spend my whole day listen to English channel, take note in Spanish, and then do translation to Italian or Portuguese. It's so hard. So sometimes I can do too many work at the same time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I took 3 years of Spanish in high school, and I know about 5.5 words. So for you to be able to do, I can't imagine the time that it takes, but to do everything. But yeah, I really appreciate what you're trying to do.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate. I shouldn't say we. I appreciate it when people make an effort to spread the message in other languages, because I only speak English, and the truth is there are plenty of people speaking it in English. Getting the message in other language is very important. When someone says that they speak Spanish in your case, or they speak Urdu, or they speak Portuguese, or whatever language that they speak, I say absolutely, and they're like, I want to start a channel, or I want to do something. I'm saying, don't start an English channel, start a channel in your native language. And you don't even have to come up with your own ideas necessarily. You can just take, you can take David Wood's scripts. He has said this himself. You can take my scripts. You can repeat exactly what we say in your own language. If you're comfortable talking to the camera, you can do it on camera. If you're not comfortable doing to the camera, you can dub it. You can add subtitles. You don't even have to, do all the research. The translation is super, super valuable. So I definitely would encourage anyone who speaks English in addition to another language to look into translating videos, because there are Muslim propagandists targeting Spanish-speaking audiences. There are Muslims speaking pretty much every language you can imagine under the sun, And most of the polemics is in English and a little bit is in Arabic, and that's basically it.
That medical doctor, Zakira, had 2 channels, one in Portuguese and another in Spanish.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Zakira's family apparently is targeting Spanish-speaking audiences and Portuguese-speaking audiences. And, you know, when you look at the languages spoken by a large number of people in the world, you got English, obviously, but then you got Spanish, you got French, you got Chinese, and you have Hindi/Urdu. And those are the languages that are spoken by like huge numbers of people. And those are the languages that make sense to target first.
Yep. Sorry,
All right.
trying to turn off.
I think that we will be logging off here in a moment. I'll give both my guests a chance to say any last words. Rif, you can go first. Anything you'd like to say?
She may be getting, she just sent us a message, said thanks, God bless you guys.
Excellent. Anything you'd like to close us out on?
I think we've pretty much said everything we need to say. You know, so we've been through a long journey today. Stay tuned. We're going to be kind of continuing to move through the Bible, answering every single question regarding whether or not Muhammad is a true prophet. And the reason why we're asking this question and we're going into it is because Surah 7, Ayah 157 says that we must find Muhammad written about in our scriptures in order for him to be considered a prophet of Islam. There's a twofold problem with this. One, if we find Muhammad written about in our scriptures, it affirms our scriptures as being directly from Allah, and then it actually disproves the Quran as being God's word, because it immensely contradicts the Bible. Sorry, I'm getting tired. But if we don't find Muhammad written about, that means that the Quran was wrong because Allah was either impotent, ignorant, or malicious in the fact that he lied, he was unable to preserve his word, or he just was dumb and he didn't know. Okay, so we're going to continue to search. We're going to continue to look for Muhammad, and just remember, whether or not we find him, Islam loses. Back to you, Thaddeus.
Sarita says, Finding NoMo must continue, and indeed it will. You know, just as Muslims will continue to find, or attempt to find, I should say, Muhammad in the Bible, we will continue to look at these arguments. I know that they often are really silly and stupid, and it seems like a waste of time to take them seriously, but Muslims take them seriously, and our goal is to reach Muslims. You know, you'll get plenty of people like our friend who joined us today who don't listen and just repeat their argument over and over again, but you will get Muslims who actually listen. You will get Muslims who come to reject this argument. I have met Muslims who say that indeed Muhammad is not found in the Bible. Now, they're still Muslims, so they'll say that's because it's been corrupted or whatever. But the point being that there are people who actually listen. I have definitely heard stories of Muslims who left Islam specifically because they couldn't actually find Muhammad in the Bible. They, you know, they took this claim seriously. They looked it up and they're like, that's not Muhammad. So it's always worth a conversation, right? You won't convert someone instantly most of the time, but if they're willing to have a conversation, that means they're at least open to the possibility of hearing what you have to say. So have those conversations. You know, raise this subject with people you know in real life. Be nice about it. You know, don't be like Iqbal, where you're trying to shout the other person down. You know, ask them thoughtful questions like I was trying to do. I did have to cut him off and make him stop interrupting us. So I did have to raise my voice, but you know, try to have a nice conversation. If the other person's willing to have a nice conversation, then, you know, ask questions. Ask them to ask them what Iqbal was asking me for. Ask them for evidence of their position. And if they can't provide it, ask them what that means. And then challenge, if they say something like, religion doesn't need evidence or whatever, say, well, my religion has evidence, and you're welcome to challenge me on that. So thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your week. As I mentioned near the start, I've been working on video. It's quite sarcastic, quite over the top. Look at how Andrew Tate is the perfect Muslim, since I have had probably over a dozen Muslims come to my channel and tell me that Islam is the truth because Andrew Tate has accepted it. Very interesting argument. So be on the lookout for that. It's in the process of editing. It should be out within a few days. I think it will. You'll either laugh with me or you'll laugh at me. Let's put it that way. So
that's a good teaser right there, man. I wasn't going to watch it anyway, but now that you said that, I'm definitely watching.
Because I watch it and I have to laugh at myself. I should have been like Ask Truth though and say that I just had someone send this to me, because I'm not actually myself in the video. I'm playing the part of a Muslim who is celebrating the conversion. So
beautiful.
All righty. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great week. God bless.
God bless you guys.